Chapter 2385. Annihilate him with a flick of a finger. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Bai Xing suddenly started laughing madly, and he was laughing like a madman. Yi Xian ignored Bai Xing and drank his tea lightly. As if he thought of something, he looked at Emissary Zhang. Did I lie? Emissary Zhang's expression froze. At this moment, the sound of footsteps suddenly came from the side, and soon, an old man walked over slowly. The old man wore a loose black robe, and his hands were hidden in his sleeves. His eyes were sharp like knives, and as he walked, he gave off an extremely oppressive feeling. Behind the old man were 4 black-robed men. All 4 of them had extremely powerful auras. The old man walked slowly to sit in front of Yi Xian. Seeing this scene, Emissary Zhang frowned slightly, and he was slightly displeased. Sit opposite Yi Xian? He didn't dare. Emissary Zhang was about to flare up, but as if he thought of something, he glanced at Yi Xian, and then stopped. The old man looked at Yi Xian. Annihilate the Yang clan with a flick of a finger, did you say that? Yi Xian nodded. It was a joke. Don't take it seriously. A joke? The old man chuckled. How interesting. You said my Yang clan can be annihilated with a flick of a finger, is that a joke? Yi Xian nodded lightly. At this moment, Bai Xing suddenly roared, how dare you look down on the Yang clan? Yi Xian glanced at the maddened Bai Xing. What does it have to do with you? Bai Xing was speechless. The old man in front of Yi Xian chuckled. Young man, I have to say, you're the most arrogant person I've ever seen. Of course, the old man can understand. After all, young people are frivolous. But do you know about the Yang clan? Yi Xian nodded. I do. The old man wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly took out a spatial ring, and it was the ring his father gave him before he left. Yi Xian placed the spatial ring on the table, and then looked at the old man. The old man looked at the storage ring and frowned. What do you mean? Yi Xian was stunned. You don't recognize this item? The long-robed old man looked at Yi Xian. Should I recognize this item? Yi Xian turned to look at Emissary Zhang. Do you recognize this object? The messenger hesitated, then shook his head. Yi Xian frowned, feeling a little puzzled. At this moment, Envoy Zhang asked softly, did the sword master give it to you? Yi Xian nodded. Emissary Zhang smiled bitterly. Then there's only one explanation. Our ranks are too low. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, the long-robed elder looked at Emissary Zhang. How should I address you? Emissary Zhang shook his head. Let Luo Tian do it. Your rank is too low, you're not fit to speak to young lord. Luo Tian. The long-robed old man narrowed his eyes. You know the realm lord. Emissary Zhang frowned. Just do as I say. What's with all the crap? A cold glow flashed through the long-robed old man's eyes, and he stood up right away. Meanwhile, 5 terrifying auras pressed down upon Emissary Zhang. A cold glow flashed through Emissary Zhang's eyes, and he flicked his sleeve. Rumble. In an instant, the bodies of the old man and the others shattered into pieces, and only their souls remained. The old man and the others were stunned when they witnessed this scene. Bai Xing's face was also filled with confusion. Meanwhile, the long-robed old man spoke with a trembling voice. You're at the High God realm. The High God realm. Bai Xing's face instantly turned pale when he heard the long-robed old man. Emissary Zhang suddenly turned around with an icy cold gaze. Luo Tian, I don't believe you don't know that the young lord has arrived. His voice rumbled like thunder, and it instantly swept through Luo City. As soon as he finished speaking, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared here. The middle-aged man wore a luxurious robe, had long hair that hung loosely on his shoulders, and emanated an extremely terrifying aura. The long-robed old man and the others hurriedly knelt down when they saw the middle-aged man. Greetings, Realm Lord. It was exactly Luo Tian. Luo Tian paid no attention to the long-robed old man and the others. He walked slowly towards Yi Xian, and then he bowed slightly under the gazes of everyone. The Realm Lord of Luo Dimension greets the young lord. The young lord. Bai Xing seemed as if he'd been struck by lightning when he heard Luo Tian, and his mind went blank. On the other hand, the long-robed old man and the others were petrified on the spot. Emissary Zhang's eyes narrowed slightly while a cold glow flickered within them. Because Luo Tian had merely bowed to Yi Xian and hadn't knelt down. Yi Xian gazed at Luo Tian and remained silent. Luo Tian didn't wait for Yi Xian to reply before he straightened his back and spoke calmly. I didn't know that the young lord had arrived at Luo Dimension. Please forgive me, young lord. Emissary Zhang laughed coldly. Forgive me? Luo Tian, are you joking? If I'm not wrong, then you should have been aware that the young lord and I had just arrived at Luo City. However, you didn't come and even allowed the powers in your city to look for trouble with the young lord. You. Luo Tian suddenly turned to look at Emissary Zhang. Emissary Zhang, according to rank, you're my subordinate. Please watch your tone. Emissary Zhang's eyes narrowed when he heard this, and a cold glow flickered within them. However, Luo Tian didn't care at all. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly chuckled lightly. You're Luo Tian, right? Luo Tian looked at Yi Xian. Yes, young lord. Yi Xian stood up and walked over to stand before Luo Tian, and he looked Luo Tian in the eyes. Answer the question that Emissary Zhang asked you earlier. Luo Tian looked at Yi Xian and remained silent. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. I'll give you one last chance. Answer me now, right now. Luo Tian remained silent for a moment before he said, I don't want to answer you. How dare you? Emissary Zhang suddenly exploded with rage, and he smashed his fist towards Luo Tian. Luo Tian turned around and smashed his fist out as well. Bang! As soon as their fists collided, the entire restaurant shattered. A terrifying pressure instantly swept through the entire Luo city. The entire Luo city was shocked. Someone actually dared to make a move in Luo city? It didn't take long for a few tens of thousands of formidable auras to shoot into the sky from within Luo city, and they instantly arrived around the restaurant and surrounded it. Meanwhile, all the powers within Luo city had set out as well. The Celestial Treasure Pavilion was the fastest to act. The president of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion's branch, Lan Qing, was the first to arrive at the scene, and he was first stunned when he saw the confrontational atmosphere here. After that, he immediately stood on Yi Xian's side. At the same time, countless experts from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion arrived behind him. In midair, Emissary Zhang stared fixedly at Luo Tian. You intend to rebel? Luo Tian's expression was calm. Rebel? Emissary Zhang, are you joking? As he spoke, he glanced at Yi Xian and said, according to my knowledge, the young lord doesn't hold any position in the Yang clan. Since he doesn't hold any position, then he can't order us around. Emissary Zhang flared up with rage when he heard this. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly chuckled. Brother Zhang, don't be angry. Emissary Zhang hesitated for a moment when he heard Yi Xian, and then he stood respectfully behind Yi Xian. Yi Xian gazed at Luo Tian, and Luo Tian's expression was calm. Yi Xian smiled. Let me guess. The reason you dared to act in this way is definitely because you have something to rely on. It's definitely someone from within the Yang clan. As he spoke, he grinned. I thought of someone, my older sister, Yang Nianxue. Yang Nianxue. Emissary Zhang's expression instantly changed when he heard this. He naturally knew of Yang Nianxue. Actually, there were many times when everyone felt that Yang Nianxue was the true young lord of the Yang clan. Because Yi Xian had practically never made an appearance in the past. The only reason everyone knew of Yi Xian was because they'd only found out about him recently. Emissary Zhang suddenly spoke in a low voice. I understand now. He's from the eldest young Mrs. line. The eldest young miss. Yi Xian looked at Emissary Zhang and smiled. My older sister stayed in the Yang clan, and many people followed her, right? Emissary Zhang nodded. There were many people by the eldest young Mrs. side, and they wanted to protect her. Young lord, you suddenly appeared. As he spoke, he looked at Luo Tian. They think that your appearance threatens the eldest young Mrs. position, and they're afraid that you'll seize the position of patriarch. Yi Xian turned to glance at Luo Tian, and he was speechless. He hadn't expected that he'd actually encounter such a melodramatic situation. Of course, he knew that it wasn't his older sister's idea, and it was his older sister's subordinates who'd made the decision on their own. However, he was also speechless. What are Luo Tian and the others thinking? Isn't Dad still alive? Are they starting an internal strife just like that? Meanwhile, Luo Tian suddenly spoke. If there's nothing else, young lord, then I'll be taking my leave. As soon as he finished speaking, he was about to leave. Although he supported Yang Nianxue, he wouldn't dare to act against Yi Xian even if he was given 100 guts. What a joke! Even if he really killed Yi Xian, would he be able to live? He definitely wouldn't be able to live. However, he didn't need to care too much about Yi Xian. After all, as he'd said, although Yi Xian was the young lord, he didn't have an actual position. Moreover, the young lord Yi Xian hadn't been officially announced yet. In short, he was on Yang Nianxue's side, and it wasn't just him, the people behind him were on Yang Nianxue's side as well. At this time, he couldn't afford to make any mistakes, and he had to stand on the right side. The colder he was to Yi Xian, the more support he would receive from the people behind him. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Wait." Luo Tian stopped and turned to look at Yi Xian, but he didn't speak. Yi Xian smiled faintly. "I'm very unhappy." He knew that he had to establish his authority today, otherwise, no one in the Yang clan would pay any attention to him in the future. Although he didn't care about the Yang clan's power, he was still the young lord of the Yang clan. How could he let these people look down on him? Many times, it was like this. You couldn't fight, and if you didn't fight, others would think you were a coward, weak, and easy to bully. Luo Tian looked at Yi Xian. Then what does the young lord want to do? Yi Xian turned to look at Lan Qing and smiled. Can you help me contact Miss Qing Guan? Lan Qing nodded, yes. Yi Xian smiled, help me contact her. Lan Qing nodded, opened his palm, and a token soared into the sky. The next moment, the depths of the starry sky split open, and a phantom image appeared in the sky. Soon, Qing Guan's image appeared in everyone's sight. At this moment, Qing Guan was in an underground palace, holding a compass in her hand. On the compass, a tiny array was spinning. At this moment, Qing Guan suddenly turned her head. When she saw Yi Xian, she was slightly stunned, and then smiled. Young Master Yi. Yi Xian smiled. Miss Qing Guan, I need your help. Qing Guan smiled. What help? Yi Xian looked at Qing Guan. I need to borrow people. Qing Guan was stunned, and then said, borrow people? Yi Xian nodded. I want to replace the sector lord of Luocheng, so I need to borrow some people from you. Everyone, Qing Guan looked at Yi Xian. You want to clean up the Yang clan's internal people? Yi Xian nodded, yes. After a moment of silence, Qing Guan said, there are many people who support your sister. Yi Xian laughed, then I'll clean them all up. Qing Guan smiled, are you going to rebel? Yi Xian nodded, then I'll rebel. At the side, Emissary Zhang's expression froze, and his body started to tremble. It's over. This young master wants to rebel. He even wants to join forces with outsiders to attack the Yang clan. What should I do? In the starry sky, the corners of Qing Guan's mouth curled up slightly. Borrow. As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a black command token suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Activate it. Meanwhile, Luo Tian spoke in a low voice. Pavilion Master Qing Guan, are you sure you want to go against the Yang clan? Qing Guan blinked, and then she looked at Yi Xian. What about your father? Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, if father makes a move, then I'll call him younger sister. Qing Guan snapped her fingers and looked at Luo Tian. If Uncle Yang doesn't come out of his seclusion, I'll destroy your Yang clan." As she spoke, she pondered for a moment, touched her small cloth bag, and said with a smile, "It really doesn't seem to be difficult. I seem to be a little arrogant, hee hee. Everyone. P.S. No more tickets. I have an idea." 7017K. Chapter 2386. Luo Tian instantly flared up with rage when he heard Qin Guan. How presumptuous. Qin Guan paid no attention to him, and she gazed at Yi Xian instead. "I'll give you another command token." As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a golden command token floated over to Yi Xian. Moreover, the command token she'd given Yi Xian earlier was black. Qin Guan smiled. "Go play by yourself. I'm going to get busy." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "I borrowed a lot of money from your people." Qin Guan stopped and turned around to look at Yi Xian. "How much did you borrow?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, "Over 4 billion universe veins." Qin Guan thought for a moment and said, "Then what do you intend to do?" Yi Xian laughed bitterly. "I can't return it to you in a short period of time." Qin Guan smiled. "Then don't return it. Just take it as me sponsoring your academy." Lan Qing's expression froze. Yi Xian blinked. "Sponsoring an academy?" Qin Guan nodded. "I understand your academy. It's not bad, and I can tell that you're serious. Of course, I want to sponsor something that's so meaningful. Not only can I sponsor money, but I can also sponsor some ancient books. However, I have a small request." Yi Xian was slightly curious. "What request?" Qin Guan said seriously, "Persist." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "I will." Qin Guan smiled. "That's good. I have some things to do. I'll help you once I'm done. At that time, I'll make Huaxia Academy merge with Guanxian Academy, and we'll establish Guanxian Academy together." Yi Xian grinned. "All right." With Qin Guan joining them, Guanxian Academy would be like a tiger that had grown wings. They had money if they wanted it. They had people if they wanted it. Without saying anything more, Qin Guan turned around and disappeared. After Qin Guan vanished, Lan Qing glanced at Yi Xian, and his expression became slightly strange. Cold sweat trickled down his back. He knew that Qin Guan and Yi Xian knew each other, but what he didn't know was that the relationship between Qin Guan and Yi Xian was a bit interesting. This young Master Yi might even become the male owner of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. Rejoicing. Fortunately, he had formed a good karma with this person. Otherwise, things would get out of hand. Yi Xian collected his thoughts and looked at the black token in his hand. He didn't waste any time and directly activated it. Boom! The black token suddenly transformed into a beam of black light that shot into the sky. In the next moment, the beam of black light disappeared into the depths of the starry sky. Yi Xian raised his head and looked towards the depths of the starry sky. It didn't take long for two mysterious experts in black robes to suddenly walk out from there. The two mysterious powerhouses took a step forward and arrived right in front of Yi Xian. When they arrived at the scene, the entire Luoqing trembled and then became illusory. The God-rank realm. Luo Tian's expression instantly became solemn when he witnessed this scene. The two mysterious experts bowed respectfully to Yi Xian. Yi Xian turned around to glance at Luo Tian. "Take him down." Luo Tian's expression instantly changed drastically. "You." Meanwhile, the two mysterious experts charged at Luo Tian. Two God-rank realm experts. Luo Tian was astounded, and he hurriedly spoke furiously, "Attack." As soon as he finished speaking, the experts behind him were about to attack. Meanwhile, Yi Xian glanced coldly at them. "Who dares?" Bang! A ray of blood-red light shot into the sky from within Yi Xian. In an instant, a strand of terrifying bloodline pressure enveloped all the experts of Luo City. The expressions of the experts of Luo City changed violently when they sensed the terrifying bloodline pressure, and they didn't dare move again. Yi Xian was a genuine young master. Attacking the young master was a true act of rebellion. Meanwhile, Emissary Zhang hurriedly stood on guard by Yi Xian's side, and he glanced coldly at the experts of Luo City. He'd been slightly panicked just now. He was really panicked when Yi Xian joined forces with outsiders to cause trouble for the Yang clan. But when he thought about it from another perspective, he realized that it was impossible for Yi Xian to rebel. Yi Xian was the young master. A genuine young master of the Yang clan. Yi Xian's objective was probably to establish his might. Yi Xian glanced at Emissary Zhang and grinned. Needless to say, Emissary Zhang was really not bad, and he deserved to be fostered properly. At the side, the experts of Celestial Treasure Pavilion that Lan Qing brought with him guarded around Yi Xian. Ever since he heard what Qin Guan said, Lan Qing had already treated Yi Xian as the future master of Celestial Treasure Pavilion. If he didn't show off now, he might not have the chance in the future. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly looked up, and deep in the starry sky, Luo Tian had been completely suppressed. Yi Xian retracted his gaze and looked at Emissary Zhang. Now, you'll temporarily take over Luo world. As he spoke, he glanced at the experts of Luo City. Kill anyone who isn't convinced. Then, he walked towards the distance. Emissary Zhang hurriedly said, "Yes, sir." As he spoke, he glanced at the experts of Luo world. Do you listen to Luo Tian or the young master? Everyone's expression was slightly ugly. Listen to Luo Tian or the young master? Emissary Zhang's gaze gradually turned cold when he saw them hesitate. This place had become a small country, and the emperor was far away. These people only knew about Luo Tian, but they didn't know about the Yang clan. Emissary Zhang aroused killing intent. However, he didn't attack. As a subordinate, the greatest taboo was to make decisions on his own. Emissary Zhang hurriedly followed Yi Xian, who was in the distance. Lan Qing glanced at Luo Tian, who was besieged in the sky, and then he shook his head. He knew that Luo Tian was finished. Unless the Yang clan really wanted Yang Nianxue to inherit the clan, or Yi Xian didn't have a good relationship with Yang Nianxue, otherwise, Luo Tian would have no chance of survival. A tiny subordinate dared to disobey the young master, and that was equivalent to breaking the rules. He naturally knew that Luo Tian wanted to show his loyalty. However, Luo Tian didn't understand that Luo Tian was just a fucking nobody. Luo Tian couldn't even be considered to be cannon fodder before the entire Yang clan, so what the fuck was he trying to show his loyalty for? Intelligence. Lan Qing shook his head and sighed. It was better to read more when one was free, so as to avoid one's intelligence not being sufficient and being doomed. Yi Xian and Emissary Zhang arrived at the city governor's estate. After they entered the estate, Yi Xian noticed that there wasn't a single soul within the estate. Obviously, they'd found out about what had occurred in the restaurant. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings. Needless to say, the estate was huge, and it was like an imperial palace. Yi Xian chuckled lightly. It's suitable to be an academy. An academy. Emissary Zhang turned around to look at Yi Xian. Young master intends to establish an academy here? Yi Xian nodded, yes. Emissary Zhang hesitated for a moment and said, Young master, forgive me for asking too much, but if you intend to establish a formidable power, then you're entirely capable of directly inheriting the Yang clan. Yi Xian shook his head. It's different. Emissary Zhang was slightly curious. What's different? Yi Xian smiled. The academy I established is quite different from the original intention of the Yang clan. It's unrealistic to change the entire Yang clan at once. Therefore, I can only rely on the Yang clan to develop an academy and slowly change the entire Yang clan in the end. Emissary Zhang was a little excited. Young master wants to fight for the position of crown prince? Yi Xian smiled. It's mine to begin with. Why bother fighting for it? After saying that, he walked into the distance. Emissary Zhang hesitated for a moment and said, "Eldest miss." Yi Xian didn't even turn his head. "If elder sister wants it, I'll give it to her. In any case, there's no difference between her and me." Emissary Zhang was slightly stunned when he heard that. The next moment, he shook his head and smiled. Luo Tian was gone. In the beginning, he also thought that the relationship between Yi Xian and Yang Nianxue wasn't good, but now it seemed that the relationship between the siblings was very good. Since the siblings had a good relationship, then wouldn't Luo Tian be a fool? Yi Xian arrived at a quiet hall. There was a statue within the hall, and it was the statue of the green-clothed man. Yi Xian grinned as he gazed at the statue. "Brother Zhang." Emissary Zhang suddenly appeared behind Yi Xian. Yi Xian pointed at the statue and said, "Remove this one. Then replace it with mine." Emissary Zhang was speechless. Emissary Zhang obeyed in the end, and it didn't take long for the statue within the hall to be replaced by Yi Xian. Yi Xian sat within the room. The two mysterious experts he'd called over earlier walked into the room, and there was another person between them. It was Luo Tian. However, Luo Tian's body was gone, and only his soul remained. Moreover, his soul was chained up by a red iron chain. The two mysterious experts brought Luo Tian over to Yi Xian, and then they bowed respectfully. Yi Xian smiled, "Thank you for your trouble." The two mysterious experts hurriedly shook their heads, and then respectfully retreated to the side. Yi Xian looked at Luo Tian and smiled, "Lord Luo Tian, from now on, I will take over the Luo world." Luo Tian glared at Yi Xian, "What right do you have?" Yi Xian smiled, and just as he was about to speak, an old man suddenly walked into the hall. As soon as the old man walked into the hall, the two mysterious experts beside Yi Xian suddenly raised their heads, and then their gazes locked onto the old man. The old man ignored their gazes, and slowly walked in front of Yi Xian. He cupped his fists, "Young master, I am Zhao Nye, the lord of the firmament world. Luo Tian is my subordinate." Yi Xian smiled, "You came so quickly." Zhao Nye said solemnly, "Young master, Luo Tian didn't do anything wrong. Why are you treating him like this?" Yi Xian looked Zhao Nye in the eye, "Are you questioning me?" Zhao Nye's expression was calm, "I don't dare. It's just that Luo Tian didn't do anything wrong, yet young master is treating him like this. This is truly unreasonable, and it disappoints us subordinates." Yi Xian fell silent. Meanwhile, an old man by Yi Xian's side spoke abruptly, "How laughable. You're just a subordinate, yet you're actually questioning your master. Who gave you the guts?" They knew about the relationship between Yi Xian and Qingguan, so they treated Yi Xian as one of their own. Zhao Nye glanced at the mysterious expert, and then he said calmly, "Sir, the Celestial Treasure Pavilion has interfered in the internal affairs of my Yang clan. I've already reported this matter, and I hope your pavilion master can give me a reasonable explanation." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Explain? What explanation?" As he spoke, he stood up and walked over to Zhao Nye. "In the past, I didn't care much about my identity as the young master. But now, I've changed my mind. I want to inherit the family business. I want to be the second generation." Zhao Nye's expression was calm. Just as he was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Cut the crap. Call for help. Ask the strongest person behind you to come out. It just so happens that I haven't called him father for a long time. Come, you call the big shot behind you, and I'll call my dad. Let's compete." Zhao Nye. 7017K. Chapter 2387. Who was the strongest person in the Yang clan? The green-robed man. Who was Yi Xian's father? The green-robed man. Zhao Nye was silent. The green-robed sword master was not someone he could come into contact with. However, if Yi Xian wanted to call him that, wouldn't it be a simple matter? They were father and son. Would Yi Xian dare to go against them? Would they dare to go against him? Thinking of this, Zhao Nye sighed. He suddenly realized that they were destined to lose this battle as soon as it began. Thinking of this, Zhao Nye sighed. He stood up and bowed, "Young master, this is our fault. Please be magnanimous." Yi Xian suddenly stood up and slashed with his sword. Chi! Not far away, Luo Tian's soul was slashed by a ray of sword light. In an instant, Luo Tian's soul was absorbed. Seeing this, Zhao Nye's expression changed. He looked at Yi Xian and said angrily, "Young." At this moment, 3 auras enveloped his body. 3 upper gods. Zhao Nye was shocked and did not dare to act up. Yi Xian looked at Zhao Nye and smiled, "Magnanimous? I am not that magnanimous." Zhao Nye stared at Yi Xian and did not speak. Emissary Zhang looked at Zhao Nye coldly, his eyes filled with killing intent. Whether it was Luo Tian or Zhao Nye, they were not that respectful towards Yi Xian. Under normal circumstances, these people did not have the right to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly smiled, "You are from the firmament world?" Hearing this, Zhao Nye was on guard, "Young master, you." Yi Xian's lips curled up, "From now on, I am in charge of the firmament world." Zhao Nye's expression turned cold, "Young master, you have no position and no right." Yi Xian suddenly said, "The Yang clan was founded by my father, so it belongs to my family. Since the firmament world belongs to my family, isn't it normal for me to take it back?" Zhao Nye looked at Yi Xian without saying a word. Yi Xian smiled and said, "The 2 seniors of Celestial Treasure Pavilion invite Realm Lord Zhao to drink tea." At this moment, Zhao Nye's body suddenly became illusory. An old man from Celestial Treasure Pavilion said solemnly, "Young Master Yi, it's too late." He left. Yi Xian frowned. Zhao Nye gazed at Yi Xian in silence, and it didn't take long for him to vanish completely. "How dare you!" At this moment, Emissary Zhang suddenly flew into a rage. "These people dare to look down on you, young master. This is too presumptuous." Yi Xian laughed and said, "I am rarely in the clan, it is normal that they do not recognize me." Emissary Zhang's face turned cold. "This is not normal. They are committing a crime." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Take care of them slowly." As he spoke, he opened his palm, and a spatial ring appeared in his hand. This was Luo Tian's spatial ring. Yi Xian glanced at the spatial ring, and there were a total of 700 million universe veins in it. 700 million. It wasn't a small amount. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth lifted slightly. He put away the spatial ring and looked at Emissary Zhang. "Help me send a message to Guanxian Academy's Qingqiu. Ask her to personally come here and take over Luo World." Emissary Zhang bowed slightly. "All right." Yi Xian added, "By the way, you should also send some competent people here to help manage it." Guanxian Academy lacked people the most, and Emissary Zhang's God World should have many talents. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Emissary Zhang bowed slightly. "All right. This subordinate will arrange it." As soon as he finished speaking, he left silently. Yi Xian suddenly turned around and looked at the 2 mysterious experts behind him. He took out the golden token that Qin Guan gifted him and asked, "Seniors, what kind of expert can this token summon?" One of them said solemnly, "An expert above High God." Above High God. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. The experts under Qin Guan were very terrifying. As if he thought of something, Yi Xian asked again, "Seniors, why do you listen to Miss Qin Guan?" One of them smiled and said, "Pavilion Master Qin is very generous." The other person nodded hurriedly. Very generous. Yi Xian was speechless. Without a doubt, these 2 fellows were bribed by money. The Tao of money was invincible. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile and collected his thoughts. Then, he looked at the spatial ring in his hand. He now had a total of 3.7 billion universe veins. He had to say, he had never been so rich before. Breakthrough to soul formation stage. Yi Xian immediately returned to Xiao Ta. He decided to break through to the soul formation stage. Now that he had money and time, he could break through to the soul formation stage. Otherwise, he felt like his cultivation base would soon be insufficient. His enemies were becoming more and more powerful. After returning to Xiao Ta, Yi Xian used a Daobi to break through to the soul formation stage. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Brother Bai, can you really help me increase my cultivation base without any upper limit?" Daobi was silent for a moment before replying, "Any cultivation base that you already know is fine. However, it will also depend on your own situation. You can increase your cultivation base by 2 stages at most. Any higher and your body and consciousness won't be able to withstand it." Yi Xian said in a solemn voice, "Brother Bai, I am still curious about something. You are the executor of fate, which means that you know the fate of Dao Yi, right?" Daobi was a little wary. "What do you want to do?" Yi Xian smiled. "I am just curious." Daobi was silent for a moment before replying, "You are right." Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "In other words, do you know when Dao Yi or a living being will die?" Daobi said, "Yes." Yi Xian was silent for a moment before the corner of his mouth slightly raised. Daobi was on guard. "What do you want to do?" Yi Xian said in a solemn voice, "I think I can become a fortune teller in the future. I can charge a fee for fortune telling." Daobi said, "You don't do anything stupid." Yi Xian was a little puzzled. "Why?" Daobi sighed in a low voice. "What you do is equivalent to revealing heaven's secrets. Revealing heaven's secrets will have serious consequences." Yi Xian was a little curious. "What consequences?" Daobi was silent for a long time before finally saying nothing. "Consequences? What consequences?" It found that there really seemed to be no consequences. Who would dare to punish this idiot? In any case, it didn't dare. Daobi sighed in a low voice. "Young Master Yi, if you reveal heaven's secrets, think about it. If a person knows in advance when he will die, what will he do?" Yi Xian said, "To change his own fate." Daobi said, "Yes. But under normal circumstances, he can't change it." Yi Xian was a little curious. "Why can't he change it?" Daobi said in a deep voice, "A person will die for a reason. His death is only an effect." Yi Xian was silent for a moment before saying, "You are the executor of fate. In other words, your master is the controller of fate. He controls the fate of all living beings. Whoever he wants to die will die, right?" Daobi said, "No." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Explain it to me." Daobi was silent for a moment before saying, "I am just a pen." Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Lousy pen, can you read my fate?" Daobi said indifferently, "You will die a horrible death. F***ck. Xiao Ta suddenly said angrily, "Lousy pen, are you unhappy with me?" Daobi said angrily, "You just found out? I have been unhappy with you for a long time, okay?" Xiao Ta said, "One-on-one." Daobi said, "One-on-one then." Xiao Ta said, "My master is Green Shirt Swordsman. My sister is Heaven's Fate. You choose." Daobi said angrily, "Is this a one-on-one fight?" Xiao Ta said indifferently, "You can also call for help." Daobi, Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. He ignored the 2 quarreling fellows. He sat cross-legged on the ground and started absorbing the universe veins. With enough universe veins, he would have the confidence to cultivate. While Yi Xian was cultivating, Qing Qiu came to Luo World. In the main hall of the city lord's mansion, Qing Qiu sat at the head seat. Not far in front of her was Emissary Zhang and a group of people from the upper god realm. Emissary Zhang looked at Qing Qiu with a respectful expression. He knew that the relationship between this little girl and Yi Xian was not ordinary. What surprised him was that he actually felt that this little girl was very dangerous. Very dangerous. Qing Qiu was only an ancestor god, but she gave him a very dangerous feeling. This shocked him. Qing Qiu said with a smile, "So those people from Luo world are still here?" Emissary Zhang collected his thoughts and nodded, "Yes. However, I'm afraid they won't be easy to use. After all, they are from Luo heaven." Qing Qiu blinked, "That's easy. Find a few people to kill, and they will be very obedient." Emissary Zhang's expression froze. Qing Qiu stood up and walked slowly to the entrance of the main hall. She looked up into the distance and said softly, "Luo world is very big. We need more people. Not only do I need powerful people, but I also need people who are cultured." Emissary Zhang nodded, "I'll do it." Qing Qiu nodded slightly, "Besides that, we need to take over the entire Luo world. Since we want to take over the entire Luo world, we have to deal with the forces in Luo world. Help me tell them that the order in Luo world will be set by Guanchuan Academy." Emissary Zhang hesitated and said, "If that's the case, will it cause chaos in Luo world?" Qing Qiu smiled and said, "Just kill a group of people." Emissary Zhang was embarrassed. Why is this little girl more violent than young Master Yi? Qing Qiu asked abruptly, "What's the name of that person who disrespected my brother?" Emissary Zhang was stunned, and then he said, "Zhao Nye. He's the Lord of Firmament World. Firmament World is more than double the size of our Luo world, and he's at least a third-level high god realm expert." Qing Qiu's eyes narrowed, "Zhao Nye." As she spoke, she looked up into the sky. In the next moment, she closed her eyes slowly, and it didn't take long for the space in the distance to warp. Emissary Zhang was stunned. What's she trying to do? It didn't take long for an image to appear in the sky, and it gradually solidified. It was Zhao Nye. Emissary Zhang was completely stunned by this scene. What's she trying to do? At this moment, Zhao Nye seemed to have sensed something as well, and he immediately turned around to look at Qing Qiu. Qing Qiu looked at Zhao Nye and opened her palm, sword. Bang! Suddenly, a sword tore through the sky above Zhao Nye. Qing Qiu's face was expressionless, slash. The sword descended in a straight line. Bang! Zhao Nye didn't even have time to react before the sword entered the top of his head. In an instant, Zhao Nye was instantly wiped out. What the fuck? Emissary Zhang fell onto his chair, and his face was filled with disbelief. Qing Qiu clapped her hands, and then she turned around to look at Emissary Zhang. "Don't tell my brother that I know how to use a sword." Emissary Zhang was speechless. Qing Qiu was about to leave when she suddenly looked to the right and blinked. "Brother has reached the soul formation realm." Hee hee. As she spoke, she snapped her fingers, and she instantly advanced from the ancestor god realm to the soul formation realm. Emissary Zhang was dumbfounded, and his entire body went numb. P.S. It's autumn, and the weather is getting colder. 7017K. Chapter 2388. She had reached the soul formation stage from the ancestral god realm. And it had happened in an instant. Emissary Zhang felt like his brain was lacking. The most terrifying thing was that this little girl had just killed Zhao Nye with a single slash of her sword. That Zhao Nye was at least a level 3 upper immortal realm expert. What kind of little girl was she? Emissary Zhang looked at Qing Qiu as if he was looking at a monster, his heart filled with shock. At this moment, Yi Xian appeared at the door. At this moment, Yi Xian had reached the soul formation stage. Seeing Yi Xian, Qing Qiu smiled sweetly. "Brother." Yi Xian was about to speak when he sized up Qing Qiu and was shocked. "You've reached the soul formation stage?" Qing Qiu nodded. Yi Xian was a little curious. "When did you reach it?" Qing Qiu giggled. "Just now. Isn't it a coincidence?" Yi Xian glanced at Qing Qiu, and then he said, "You broke through just now?" Qing Qiu nodded hurriedly. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian gently rubbed Qing Qiu's little head and said with a smile, "You're amazing." Qing Qiu smiled slightly. "Brother, how's your human realm sword intent?" Yi Xian opened his palm, and a gust of sword intent slowly floated out of his palm. Human realm sword intent. Yi Xian looked at the sword intent in his hand with a solemn expression. After not seeing it for a long time, he realized that his sword intent had become stronger again. At this moment, Qing Qiu suddenly said, "It's not enough." Yi Xian looked at Qing Qiu and Qing Qiu said in a low voice, "Brother's sword intent is not even at the initial level." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Initial level?" Qing Qiu nodded. "When I can use my sword intent to destroy a world like the Luo realm, then I'll be at the initial level." Yi Xian was speechless. Emissary Zhang hesitated for a moment before he said, "He's going to crush Luo dimension with pure sword intent?" Qing Qiu nodded. Emissary Zhang smiled bitterly. "I'm afraid it will be difficult." Qing Qiu was expressionless. "Is it very difficult?" "I think it's very simple." Emissary Zhang, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He didn't think that Qing Qiu was lying. After all, who was the girl in front of him? Qing Qiu suddenly said, "Brother, leave the sword intent to me. I want your sword Dao to improve rapidly. I'm off to work." With that, she turned around and left. After leaving the main hall, Qing Qiu started to get busy. She wanted to change the entire Luo world. Luo world was big enough. If everyone in Luo world believed in Yi Xian, then Yi Xian's mortal world sword intent would change. Of course, this was not a simple matter. Yi Xian's sword Dao was destined to not be successful in one step. He could only do it slowly. In the main hall, Yi Xian was listening to Emissary Zhang's report. Emissary Zhang didn't dare to say anything about Zhao Nye. If Qing Qiu could kill Zhao Nye in a second, then she could kill him in a second too. He still didn't dare to provoke Qing Qiu. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "How is Zhao Nye in Song World?" Emissary Zhang's expression froze. What else could he do? He's gone. Yi Xian looked at Emissary Zhang. What's wrong? Emissary Zhang shook his head. Young master, you have to solve one thing. Many people in Yang family don't respect you. With that, he hesitated before asking, "Can you contact Sword Master?" Yi Xian laughed. "If I have to look for my father for such a small matter, then wouldn't I be too useless?" Emissary Zhang said in a deep voice. "But one word from Sword Master can change your current situation." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "It's different. Although I am the Yang family's young master, I have to make the Yang family submit to me. Even if my father knew about my current situation, he wouldn't care about me. If I don't even have this ability, how can I manage the entire Yang family?" Emissary Zhang nodded. "That's true." Yi Xian looked at Emissary Zhang and smiled. "Follow me. When I am in power, you will be my right-hand man." Hearing this, Emissary Zhang immediately knelt down. This subordinate is willing to follow young master forever, even if it means death. Yi Xian blinked. "If I fight with my father, who will you help?" "Ah." Emissary Zhang looked at Yi Xian in astonishment. Yi Xian smiled. "Who will you help?" After struggling for a while, Emissary Zhang gritted his teeth. "I will follow young master. From today onwards, I will follow young master and not the Yang family." Yi Xian looked at Emissary Zhang for a while and helped him up. "You're at the first level upper god state now, right?" Emissary Zhang nodded. Yi Xian smiled. "What do I need to reach the second level?" Emissary Zhang said in a deep voice, "Money." Yi Xian asked, "How much?" After a moment of silence, Emissary Zhang said, "At least 1.5 billion." After saying that, he looked at Yi Xian with anticipation. Yi Xian thought for a while and said, "Forget it. Pretend I didn't ask anything just now. After saying that, he turned around and left. Ah. Emissary Zhang was petrified on the spot. At this moment, a storage ring suddenly floated in front of Emissary Zhang. There were 1.5 billion in the storage ring. At the same time, Yi Xian's voice came from afar. Come. Emissary Zhang was overjoyed. He quickly kept the storage ring and chased after him. Yi Xian did not stay in the Luo world. Instead, he used the green profound sword to travel through time and space and arrived at the Wenren clan. He had spent more than 1 billion on Wenren Lan back then. This money could not be spent in vain. As for Emissary Zhang, he had already arranged for him to cultivate in Xiao Ta. If he cultivated outside, who knew how long it would take for him to reach the second level upper god state. When Yi Xian arrived at the Wenren clan, Yi Xian instantly felt that something was wrong. The atmosphere in the Wenren clan was very tense. Inside the main hall, Wenren Lan led a group of people and was confronting the Wenren clan's patriarch, Wenren Yun. Wenren Yun looked at Wenren Lan in front of him. Are you trying to force me to abdicate? Wenren Lan's expression was calm. Dad, why don't you think about it from another perspective? Look, your daughter is so outstanding. Shouldn't you be happy? Wenren Yun was furious. Happy? Why should I be happy when you want to force me to abdicate? Wenren Lan looked at Wenren Yun. I'm your daughter. Wenren Yun stared fixedly at Wenren Lan. Is there a daughter who would force me to abdicate like you? Wenren Yun sighed softly. Dad, let's get straight to the point. Are you going to abdicate? Wenren Yun's expression was calm. No. Wenren Lan nodded. She stood up and said, Summon the ancestor. I want the ancestor to decide. Everyone was speechless. Bang. Meanwhile, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared within the Wenren clan. In the next moment, a ray of white light appeared within the main hall. The god state. Even though it was only a strand of a soul, its aura was so formidable that all the experts present here felt an invisible pressure. Meanwhile, an old man appeared within the main hall. It was the ancestor of the Wenren clan. Everyone hurriedly bowed when they saw the ancestor of the Wenren clan. However, the ancestor of the Wenren clan didn't say anything. He just looked up into the distance and smiled. Since you're here, why don't you come out and meet me? Everyone was shocked when they heard this, and they hurriedly turned to look outside the main hall. Meanwhile, a man appeared at the entrance to the main hall. It was Yi Xian. Wenren Lan was first stunned when she saw Yi Xian, and then she was delighted. She hurriedly ran over to Yi Xian and smiled. Why are you here? Yi Xian smiled. I'm here to see you. Wenren Lan rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. There are many people here. Why are you saying such mushy words? Huh? Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Mushy? Are my words mushy? Fuck. Yi Xian felt like his brain wasn't enough to process all of this. Meanwhile, Wenren walked over to Yi Xian, and she smiled. Young Master Yi. Yi Xian looked at Wenren Lan and smiled. Miss Yi, long time no see. Wenren Lan smiled. I never expected that young Master Yi would come to the Wenren clan. Yi Xian laughed. Meanwhile, the Wenren clan's patriarch suddenly looked at Yi Xian and frowned. Who are you? Yi Xian looked at the Wenren clan's patriarch and was about to speak. At this moment, the Wenren clan's ancestor suddenly turned to look at the Wenren clan's patriarch and raised her hand to slap him. Slap. Before everyone could react, the Wenren clan's patriarch was slapped, and his body shattered. Everyone was stunned. The Wenren clan's ancestor was stunned as well. The Wenren clan's ancestor glanced coldly at the Wenren clan's patriarch. If you don't know how to talk, then don't. Wenren Yun was speechless. The Wenren clan's ancestor turned to look at Yi Xian and smiled. Little friend, how should I address you? Yi Xian smiled. Yi Xian. The Wenren clan's ancestor nodded slightly, and then looked at Wenren Lan. Little girl, is this your friend? Wenren Lan nodded. Yes. As she spoke, she bowed slightly. Ancestor, I summoned you here because I want to become the Wenren clan's patriarch. However, my father refuses to give up his position. So, I want you to help me persuade him. The Wenren clan's ancestor had a calm expression on his face. He glanced at Wenren Yun and said, How did you become the patriarch? Wenren Yun was speechless. The Wenren clan's ancestor gazed at Wenren Lan. From this moment onward, you're the patriarch of my Wenren clan. Wenren Lan was slightly stunned, and then she hurriedly said, Thank you, ancestor. The Wenren clan's ancestor glanced at Yi Xian and grinned. This little girl is still young. Little friend, please take care of her. Yi Xian smiled, of course. The Wenren clan's ancestor nodded. Until next time. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished completely. Everyone here was gazing at Yi Xian. No one here was stupid, so they were naturally able to discern the Wenren clan's ancestors' attitude towards Yi Xian. It wasn't just respect, it was slight reverence and flattery. Wenren Lan turned around and gazed at Yi Xian as well. You don't know me, but I really respect you. Yi Xian smiled, is that so? Wenren Lan glared at Yi Xian. Stop pretending. Yi Xian roared with laughter and said, Congratulations on becoming the patriarch of the Wenren clan. Wenren Lan spoke softly, Didn't you want to establish an academy? Yi Xian nodded. Wenren Lan smiled and said, Send someone. Just let me know if you need anything. Yi Xian smiled, Thank you. Wenren Lan shook her head. I should be the one thanking you. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Why don't you help me establish an academy? He really lacked manpower right now. Wenren Lan frowned slightly, But I don't study. Yi Xian was speechless. Wenren Lan suddenly said, I'll do it. Yi Xian turned around to look at Wenren Lan. Wenren Lan smiled, Young Master Yi, if you don't worry, then leave it to me. I'll get it done. Yi Xian smiled, That's naturally good. With that, he smiled and said, Then I'm leaving. If you need anything, just contact me. Wenren Lan suddenly interrupted Yi Xian, You're leaving now. Yi Xian looked at Wenren Lan and smiled, Is there anything else? Wenren Lan looked straight at Yi Xian, You came here to establish an academy? Yi Xian nodded. Wenren Lan flew into a rage, You just said you came to see me. Yi Xian's expression froze. Within the hall, the faces of the Wenren clan experts instantly darkened. The Wenren clan probably wants to change their surname. 7017K. Chapter 2389. As he gazed at the angry Wenren Lan, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, There's no conflict between me coming to see you and running the academy. Wenren Lan glared at Yi Xian and wanted to say something, but Wenren Yun suddenly pulled on her arm and said, You're the patriarch now, be careful with your words. Wenren Lan's face was expressionless, Everyone, leave. All the experts of the Wenren clan were speechless. Wenren Lan frowned slightly, Do all of you not understand? We want to have a private conversation. Everyone was speechless. In the end, everyone left. Wenren Lan was the patriarch now, and it was decided by the Wenren clan's ancestor, so no one dared to object. However, the Wenren clan's patriarch, Wenren Yun, hadn't left. At this moment, Wenren Yun was still slightly unwilling. How could he be willing to let his own daughter take the position of patriarch? But he was very clear that he couldn't change anything. He couldn't change the ancestors' decision at all. What he wanted to do now was to build a good relationship with this daughter of his. Wenren Lan glanced at Wenren Yun and was slightly displeased. Dad, can you not disturb us? Go do what you need to do. Wenren Yun's face darkened. I'm your dad. Wenren Lan frowned slightly. I didn't say I wasn't, I just asked you not to disturb us. Wenren Yun hesitated for a moment and said, you're the patriarch of the Wenren clan, you have to remember your identity. Don't be emotional because of a man, you. Wenren Lan sighed softly. Dad, do you think he would take a fancy to my Wenren clan? Wenren Yun was stunned. Wenren Lan shook her head. Would a person who could make an ancestor at the high god realm feel such reverence for our Wenren clan's business? Wenren Yun glanced at Yi Xian and fell silent. Wenren Lan shook her head. Leave. Wenren Yun glanced at Yi Xian and laughed in self-ridicule before turning around and leaving. After Wenren Yun left, Wenren Lan looked at Yi Xian and didn't speak. Yi Xian smiled. Why are you looking at me? Wenren Lan fell silent for a moment. Go. My sister and I will take care of the academy's matters. Wenren Ing held Wenren Lan's hand and shook her head. Don't be like this. Wenren Lan's face was expressionless as she turned around and disappeared on the spot. Wenren sighed in a low voice. Then she looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, Young Master Yi, can we talk? Yi Xian laughed and said, Of course. Wenren said softly, She likes you. Yi Xian smiled. I can feel it. Wenren asked, Do you like her? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Miss Yi, she only likes me. She doesn't love me. Liking and love are two different things. Wenren looked at Yi Xian. Her love is love. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Wenren said, You have a lot of women, right? Yi Xian was speechless. Wenren said softly, This girl is very hot-tempered. She definitely doesn't want to be with you with other women. You are a smart person, so you should have guessed it. So, you don't want to mess with her. But your charm is too great. Yi Xian said with a smile, Am I attractive? Wenren nodded. You are rich, handsome, powerful, and have a strong background. You also know how to make women like you. Most importantly, you are very courageous. When you saved me, you were very domineering. She must have fallen in love with you at that time. Yi Xian thought for a while and said with a smile, Now that you mention it, I find that if I were a woman, I would also fall in love with myself. Wenren was speechless. Xiao Ta suddenly said, Young master, can you be more shameless? Yi Xian was speechless. Wenren shook her head and smiled. Young Master Yi, I forgot to tell you. You have another terrible thing about you, which is that you are shameless. Yi Xian's face suddenly darkened. Am I that shameless? Wenren chuckled. Do you like Miss Lan? Yi Xian thought for a while and said, I don't hate her. Wenren's expression froze. Small Tower sighed in a low voice. F***ck, young master, do you know how trashy your words are? Yi Xian said calmly, Then what do you want me to say? I really don't hate her. Xiao Ta was speechless. Dedeabi suddenly said, We can't let her come to the Milky Way. In front of Yi Xian, Wenren shook her head and smiled. Young Master Yi, you. Yi Xian smiled. Miss Yi, do you like me? Wenren was slightly stunned. Yi Xian asked again, Do you like me? Wenren was silent for a while and said, I don't hate her. As soon as she said that, she was also stunned. Yi Xian smiled. Then he said, I'll come to see you another day. Then, he took out a storage ring and put it in Wenren's hand. This is the money for the establishment of the academy. I will send people to help you. Then, he turned around and left. Wenren looked at the storage ring in her hand and said nothing. At this time, Wenren Lan appeared next to Wenren. She looked into the distance. Sister, do you like him? Wenren Lan rolled her eyes at Wenren Lan. Silly girl, you. Wenren Lan turned around and looked at Wenren Lan. You are always like this. You never dare to look into your heart. Then, she looked into the distance and said softly, Isn't he 100 times better than Mu Wen? Wen Renlan was silent. Wen Renlan said again, "Don't have any psychological burden. Anyway, nothing happened between you and Mu Wen." Wen Renlan smiled. "Silly girl, he is very far away from us. What you see now is only the tip of the iceberg of his true strength. Besides, there must be many excellent women around him." Wen Renlan said indifferently, "So what?" Wen Renlan sighed in her heart. There was a trace of worry in her eyes. After Yi Xian left the Wenren clan, he returned to Qing City. With the Qingxian sword, it was easy for him to go anywhere he wanted. And when he returned to Qing City, he was shocked. The entire Qing province had undergone earth-shaking changes. Today's Qing province, Kanglan Academy had become Guanxian Academy, and Guanxian Academy had become a superpower in Qing province. With the help of Guanxian Academy, the entire Qing province's martial arts civilization rose like a rocket. Yi Xian came to Guanxian Academy. This used to be Kanglan Academy. When he came here, a sense of familiarity arose. Yi Xian smiled. He looked up. Inside the academy, there was the sound of reading from time to time. Yi Xian went directly to Kanglan Palace. In front of Kanglan Palace, there were hundreds of students sitting cross-legged. The sound of reading just now came from these students. And in front of these students, a man was teaching. It was none other than Mo Yinqi. Yi Xian looked at Mo Yinqi and smiled. The current Mo Yinqi was no longer as immature and flashy as before. There was only maturity and steadiness. He had grown up. Yi Xian suddenly thought of the scene when he had just arrived at Kanglan Academy. At that time, he was really happy. And Ji Anji, Shaoqi, Baizhe, full of memories. The smile on Yi Xian's face grew wider. At this moment, Mo Yinqi, who was teaching in the distance, seemed to have sensed something and suddenly raised his head to look at Yi Xian. When he saw Yi Xian, Mo Yinqi was stunned at first, and then he smiled. "Why are you back?" Hearing this, the students suddenly turned around. When they saw Yi Xian, all of them were stunned, and then they hurriedly stood up and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Dean." "Dean." All the students were extremely excited. Because Yi Xian was really too mysterious. Yi Xian rarely came to this academy, and many students who joined the academy had only heard of Yi Xian but had never seen Yi Xian. Therefore, Yi Xian had always been a legendary existence, and at this moment, they had never imagined that the legendary dean would actually return to the academy. Yi Xian glanced at the students and smiled. "No need to be so polite." All the students stood up and sized up Yi Xian curiously. Yi Xian smiled. "Isn't he much more handsome than the statue?" When he arrived, he noticed that there was a statue of him at the foot of the mountain, and it was very large and very long. Hearing Yi Xian's words, all the students instantly laughed. At this moment, a girl around the age of 16 or 17 suddenly ran over to Yi Xian, and she looked at Yi Xian. "Dean, you're a swordsman, right?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." The girl blinked. "Can I perform?" As soon as she finished speaking, her face was filled with anticipation. The other students were the same. Yi Xian roared with laughter. "Sure." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and in the next moment, the azure sword suddenly shot into the sky. After it entered the clouds, it shook violently, and then countless swords throughout Azure Prefecture suddenly shook violently before transforming into rays of light that shot into the sky. In the end, they converged in the sky above Guanxian Academy like a river. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of thousands of swords had converged in the sky above Guanxian Academy. At this moment, all the experts of Azure Prefecture turned to look at Guanxian Academy. "That man has returned." All the students of Guanxian Academy looked up at the hundreds of thousands of swords in the sky, and they were extremely shocked. The current Azure Prefecture's martial arts civilization had far surpassed the past, but there weren't many true swordsman experts, and there wasn't anyone as strong as Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly commanded in his mind, and the hundreds of thousands of swords directly shot into the sky and went straight into the depths of the starry sky. This one shot caused the entire galaxy to tremble. Yi Xian suddenly pressed down with his right hand, and the hundreds of thousands of swords fell straight down from the depths of the starry sky, and the entire sky was directly torn apart. Looking at the hundreds of thousands of swords falling straight down, the students below were horrified and retreated one after another. However, when the swords arrived several thousand feet above Guanxian Academy, all the swords suddenly stopped in unison. Seeing this scene, the students immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. With a flick of his sleeve, all the swords suddenly transformed into rays of light that vanished in the sky, returning to their rightful owners. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the azure sword returned to his hand. He looked at the little girl in front of him and smiled. "Am I handsome?" The little girl nodded vigorously. "Handsome." Yi Xian laughed heartily. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young lord, I also want to show off." Yi Xian. P.S. Thank you, vast blue starry sky, old you once said, book friend 565425577, One Sword urges updates, waiting for readers to tip. There are still many readers, so forgive me for not being able to list them one by one. Sorry, thank you for your usual tips and votes. I dare not guarantee that I will read other comments, but for those that tip and vote, I will definitely read them every day, and update them at any time. Thank you for your tips and support. Love you all. 7017K. Chapter 2390. Hearing Xiao Ta's words, Yi Xian's face darkened. "You're going to pretend too?" Xiao Ta said, "That's right. Since Little Soul has done it, let me do it too." Yi Xian said with a smile, "How do you want to pretend?" Xiao Ta was silent for a moment, then said, "Watch me." With that, he suddenly rushed out of Yi Xian's body. Boom! A golden light shot into the sky. Rumble. In an instant, a huge tower suddenly appeared in the sky above Guanxian Academy. This huge tower was hundreds of thousands of feet tall, covering the sky and covering the sun. Seeing this huge tower, all the students present were stunned. Someone exclaimed, "What a huge tower! It should be able to store a lot of things." Yi Xian, in the sky, Xiao Ta suddenly trembled violently. In the next instant, a terrifying pressure swept down from the sky. Boom! In an instant, the entire firmament world was in an uproar. Everyone's expression changed drastically. This Xiao Ta could totally destroy the entire firmament world. Yi Xian's expression also changed slightly. He hurriedly said, "Xiao Ta, that's enough." In the sky, Xiao Ta laughed loudly. "Young master, I haven't had enough of pretending." Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly turned into a golden light and descended. Boom! In an instant, the entire firmament world was directly stored into Xiao Ta's body. Yi Xian, inside Xiao Ta, everyone was dumbfounded. Soon, someone discovered that the flow of time inside Xiao Ta was different from the outside. Uproar. Inside Xiao Ta, countless students were completely in an uproar. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian frowned. With a thought, Xiao Ta directly turned into a golden light and disappeared. Everything returned to normal. In the field, an Exian and the students were still in shock. Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, why are you stopping me? Let me pretend a little longer." Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Mo Yunqi said abruptly, "Everyone, study by yourselves." Self-study. When the students heard Mo Yunqi's words, none of them moved. They were still surrounding Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled and said, "I'll have a chat with your instructor." Hearing this, those students retreated unwillingly. Mo Yunqi walked in front of Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian, then smiled. "Why did you suddenly think of coming back?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "I missed you guys. Mo Yinchi shook his head. As if I'd believe you. Yi Xian laughed. Let's go. Mo Yinchi nodded. As the two of them walked to the side, Yi Xian said softly, great changes have taken place in the Green Province. Mo Yinchi smiled and said, it's all thanks to you. Yi Xian smiled and said, that's a good thing. Mo Yinchi nodded. According to what I know, you don't just want to change the Green Province, you want to change the entire universe? Yi Xian nodded. Mo Yinchi turned to look at Yi Xian and said with a smile, you weren't like this in the past. Yi Xian smiled and said, what was I like in the past? Mo Yinchi said softly, at that time, you valued loyalty and relationships, but it was only limited to your friends and family. Yi Xian fell silent. Mo Yinchi smiled and said, the current you has changed a lot. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. I've experienced a lot. Mo Yinchi nodded. I can tell. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings, and then he smiled and said, once I fulfill my wish in the future, I'll return to Green Province to be a teacher. Mo Yinchi roared with laughter. You're welcome. But my intuition tells me that this day probably won't come. Yi Xian turned to look at Mo Yinchi. Why? Mo Yinchi said in a low voice, intuition. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, Brother Bai, you're the executor of fate, so you should know a lot. Dedeabi fell silent for a moment, and then he said, I don't know your fate. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Why? Dedeabi said indifferently, there are two big shots who have changed your fate, so you're not under my control at all. My master can control you, but... At this point, he didn't continue speaking. Yi Xian said in a low voice, in other words, my future fate is unknown? Dedeabi said, yes. However, I think it's unlikely that you'll come back to teach. Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Why? Dedeabi said indifferently, intuition. Yi Xian, Dedeabi said again, young Master Yi, forgive me for speaking bluntly. Although you have 3 big shots supporting you, but my intuition tells me that your future might not be so good. Don't ask me why, it's just intuition. Yi Xian was silent. Xiao Ta said indifferently, young master, don't panic. As long as Sister Tianming is here, you will be here. Sister Tianming is the eternal God. Dedeabi sighed softly. Xiao Ta suddenly said, stupid Ta, are you questioning Sister Tianming? Dedeabi said angrily, stupid Ta, don't speak without thinking, when did I question heaven's fate? Xiao Ta said indifferently, then do you think what I said makes sense? Dedeabi was silent for a moment, and then he said, I don't want to talk nonsense with an uncultured stupid Ta like you. You don't know anything, only know how to act cool. Xiao Ta, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, retracting his thoughts. He was about to speak, when Mo Yinchi suddenly said, you guys talk. With that, he turned and left. Yi Xian looked into the distance. Not far away, a woman was standing there. The person who came was Ji Anji. Today, Ji Anji was wearing a pure white dress, her long hair draped over her shoulders, and there was a long saber at her waist. This was what Yi Xian had given her back then. In Ji Anji's hand, there was also a chicken drumstick. Yi Xian smiled slightly, he walked in front of Ji Anji, and then said with a smile, Anji, long time no see. Ji Anji nodded slightly. Yi Xian smiled and said, let's walk together. Ji Anji nodded. The two of them walked towards the back of the mountain. On the way, Yi Xian suddenly grabbed Ji Anji's hand. Ji Anji hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he chose not to break free. Yi Xian pulled Ji Anji into the distance, he turned to look at Ji Anji, and said with a smile, is the chicken drumstick delicious? Ji Anji lowered his head slightly. You cook delicious. Yi Xian laughed, he opened his palm, and the Qingxian sword suddenly turned into a sword light and disappeared into the distance. Not long after, the Qingxian sword returned in front of Yi Xian, and on the tip of the Qingxian sword, there was a chicken. Little soul, Yi Xian smiled and said, let's go, I'll make something for you. With that, he brought Ji Anji to the back of the mountain, found an empty space, and then began to roast chicken for Ji Anji. The two of them just sat there. Ji Anji looked at the golden roast chicken in front of her, and her saliva almost flowed out. Yi Xian glanced at Ji Anji, shook his head, and smiled. This girl still loved to eat. At this moment, the sound of footsteps suddenly came from the side, and Yi Xian turned to look. Not far away, a woman was slowly walking over. White armor, scimitar. The person who had come was Princess Jiang Jiu of the country of Jiang. As valiant and heroic as ever. Jiang Jiu walked in front of Yi Xian and Ji Anji, and said with a smile, I didn't disturb you, did I? Yi Xian smiled and said, not at all. Let's eat together. The corner of Jiang Jiu's mouth curled up, and then she sat beside Ji Anji. Jiang Jiu looked at Yi Xian, are you serious about building an academy? Yi Xian nodded, Qingzhou is just the tip of the iceberg, I want to open an academy to the entire universe. Jiang Jiu asked, and then? Yi Xian smiled and said, and then create a brand new order. Jiang Jiu was silent. Ji Anji suddenly said, it's very difficult. Yi Xian nodded, very difficult, but I have confidence. Jiang Jiu was silent for a moment, and then he said, what can we help you with? Yi Xian smiled and said, manage Qingzhou well, and make Qingzhou better. Jiang Jiu rolled his eyes at Yi Xian, and then he said, are you looking down on us for being weak? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, little Jiu, this Qingzhou is also very important. Moreover, one day, I hope I can return here. Jiang Jiu looked at Yi Xian, really? Yi Xian nodded. Jiang Jiu was silent for a moment, and then he said, okay, we will wait for you to come back and retire. Yi Xian laughed. On the other side, Mo Yinchi stopped Bai Zai. Bai Zai looked at Mo Yinchi, and he frowned slightly. Mo Yinchi, why are you stopping me? Mo Yinchi said, Bandit Yi is chatting with Anji and the others now, don't disturb them. Bai Zai frowned slightly, why can't I disturb them? I haven't seen him for a long time. I'm going to see him. Mo Yinchi said in a low voice, they are a man and a woman chatting, why are you going to interfere? Bai Zai said in a low voice, we are friends. Mo Yinchi had a headache, Bai Zai, when can you stop being such a straight man? I really have to give it to you. They want to have some alone time, do you understand? Bai Zai was silent for a moment, and then he said, do you think I will disturb them? Mo Yinchi nodded, you finally understand. Bai Zai frowned slightly, why would I disturb them? Mo Yinchi's expression froze. At the back of the mountain, Yi Xian was roasting chicken, and Jiang Jiu and Ji Anji each had a drumstick. Jiang Jiu was eating quietly, but Ji Anji was wolfing down the food. Yi Xian looked at the two women, and he smiled. Cordial. He had to say, every time he returned to Qingzhou, he felt very cordial, a feeling that he did not have outside. Unfortunately, Yi Ling was not here. Yi Ling. Yi Xian sighed softly, he had not seen Yi Ling for a very long time. He did not know how that girl was doing now. But fortunately, that girl should be in the Yang clan now. In the Yang clan, no one would dare to bully her. And Sister Nian. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. There were many people he wanted to see, especially Sister Nian. After she left, there was no news of her, he did not know where she was now. Besides Sister Nian, there was also Tu. He had already asked Emissary Zhang to help find Tu, but there was no news until now. At this moment, Jiang Jiu looked at Yi Xian, what are you thinking about? Yi Xian said with a smile, I miss some old friends. Jiang Jiu glanced at Yi Xian, and did not say anything. Yi Xian was about to speak. At this moment, the space in front of Yi Xian trembled slightly, and soon, Yi Xian frowned deeply. Luo world, the Yang clan came. And they did not come with good intentions. Yi Xian frowned. Was he really going to destroy the Yang clan? Yi Xian's gaze gradually turned cold. This time, he was very angry. 7017K. Yi Xian smiled. What? You want to take revenge for Zhao Nye? Sang said as well, young master, this woman killed a member of my Yang clan. I intend to take her back to the Hall of Justice and hand her over to be punished severely. Yi Xian walked slowly towards Sang. You intend to take Qingqiu with you? Sang didn't show any weakness, and he met Yi Xian's gaze. Yes. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. In the next moment, he suddenly vanished on the spot, and he'd fled this expanse of the universe when he appeared once more. The green profound sword suddenly flew out from Yi Xian's grasp. Instant of invincibility. This was the first time Yi Xian had utilized instant of invincibility in battle. The moment Yi Xian displayed this move, Zhang's pupils shrank abruptly. He clenched his fists, and an earth-shattering power suddenly swept out from his body. At this time, four afterimages carrying sword lights slashed out from Zhang's surroundings. Chi, 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 chi. In an instant, four tearing sounds resounded in the battlefield. At this time, Yi Xian returned to the real universe. Sword sheathed. Yi Xian turned around and walked to Qingqiu's side. He picked up the cup of spiritual tea that Qingqiu handed to him and took a sip. Behind him, Zhang's body suddenly split into pieces, and so did his soul. Directly erased. He didn't even have time to say his last words. In the battlefield, the 6 powerhouses were petrified on the spot. He was killed just like that. Zhang, a 5th-level high god, was gone just like that. The 6 powerhouses were completely dumbfounded. In the distance, Yi Xian looked at Qingqiu and said with a smile, "What do you think of this sword technique?" Qingqiu blinked and remained silent. Yi Xian said seriously, "I created it myself." Qingqiu hurriedly gave him a thumbs up. "It's peerless." Yi Xian roared with laughter. Qingqiu glanced at the 6 powerhouses in the distance, and then he said, "Did you kill them?" Yi Xian turned around to look at them. "Are all of you from the greater celestial dimension?" The 6 of them hurriedly nodded. Revenge? They didn't even dare think about it. No matter what, this person before them was the young master of the Yang clan. Even though he didn't have any position, he was still a young master. Yi Xian gazed silently at the 6 powerhouses in front of him. Actually, he knew why he hadn't been acknowledged by them. It was probably because his father had never acknowledged him in the Yang clan, and many people in the Yang clan probably felt that he was an illegitimate child. After all, Sister Shui had always been with his father, and many people should have regarded Sister Shui as the heir of the Yang clan, but his father had never acknowledged him in the Yang clan. Of course, his father must have never thought of this. The Yang clan was a big force, and a super force at that. The internal structure of such a force must be complicated. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the spatial ring that his father had given him appeared in his hand. This spatial ring should also be a symbol of status, but these people didn't recognize it. Could it be that their ranks were too low? Yi Xian felt a headache coming on. At this time, Qingqiu suddenly smiled. "Brother, do you want to kill these 6 people?" Hearing this, the 6 people's faces suddenly became ugly. Yi Xian turned to look at the 6 people, and said with a smile, "Go. Go back and tell the Lord of the Greater Celestial Dimension that if he wants to cause trouble for me, tell him to come personally, don't send." Saying this, he frowned slightly. "No need for him to come personally, I will go personally. Take me to the Greater Celestial Dimension." Hearing this, the 6 people hesitated. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. "What's wrong?" One of them quickly said, "No problem, we will take young Lord to the Greater Celestial Dimension." Yi Xian nodded. At this time, Qingqiu suddenly said, "Brother, I will go with you." Yi Xian was a little hesitant, and Qingqiu quickly said, "I will go to the Greater Celestial Dimension to inspect the Greater Celestial Dimension. Anyway, the academy in the Luo world has been established, with them there will be no problem. Yi Xian shook his head with a smile, all right. Then let's go together. Qing Qiu immediately smiled sweetly. Yi Xian looked at the 6 people, let's go. The 6 people nodded, and then disappeared on the spot with Yi Xian. In the space-time tunnel, Qing Qiu was a little curious. Brother, don't the Yang clan know you? Yi Xian smiled, yes, but father probably didn't mention me in the Yang clan, so they don't take me seriously. And I don't know where the headquarters of the Yang clan is. Saying this, he shook his head with a smile. Needless to say, he was a little ashamed. As the young lord of the Yang clan, he actually didn't know where the headquarters of the Yang clan was. This was really a failure. Qing Qiu nodded slightly, deep in thought. Not long after, the 6 people brought Yi Xian and his sister to the greater celestial dimension. When entering the greater celestial dimension, Yi Xian saw many floating cities. Each city was like a giant hand entrenched in the starry sky, extremely spectacular. In this world, he sensed many powerful auras. The martial arts civilization of this greater celestial dimension was obviously much higher than the Luo world. Right at this moment, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and the others. The 6 people by Yi Xian's side hurriedly bowed respectfully when they saw this old man. Greetings, Left Protector. Left Guardian. The old man ignored the 6 people, his eyes directly fell on Yi Xian. A moment later, he said, Greetings, young lord. Although he addressed him as young lord, there was not the slightest respect in his expression and attitude. Yi Xian smiled and said, Who is the right guardian to you? The old man's expression was calm, colleague. Yi Xian smiled, Congratulations. The old man frowned slightly, Congratulations? Yi Xian blinked, Of course, because now you are the only guardian in the greater celestial dimension. The old man was slightly stunned. The next moment, his expression changed instantly. Obviously, he had understood Yi Xian's meaning. Left Guardian had been killed. Yi Xian walked slowly to Left Guardian, Bring me to see your realm lord. Left Guardian looked at Yi Xian, not saying a word. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice, I really can't understand, even if you want to support my sister as the heir, can you first investigate my relationship with my sister? Or, can't you go and ask my sister first when you're deliberately targeting me? I dare to bet that you definitely haven't asked my sister. You are all guessing my sister's thoughts, thinking that she is very happy that you are targeting me, right? Left Guardian was silent. Yi Xian continued, As far as I know, your current level in the Yang clan is still considered the bottom. Since you are all at the bottom, why are you standing on the side? Even if I don't get along with my sister, do you think that is something you can interfere with? Please, use your brain, will you? I am my father's biological son, I have the purest mad demon bloodline in the Yang clan. Even if I am a waste, I am not someone you can target, understand? Just like now, I dare to kill you, but do you dare to kill me? Left Guardian did not speak, because there was nothing to say. Because as Yi Xian said, Yi Xian dared to attack them, but even if they were given 100 guts, they would not dare to attack Yi Xian. Yi Xian was after all the green-robed sword master's biological son. Yi Xian continued, You have cultivated to this point, so you are not a brainless person. The reason why you treat me like this is very simple, as I said, you want to stand on the side of my sister, or rather, your boss is standing on the side of my sister, but, his lips curled up, how do you know that my relationship with my sister is not good? What if we have a very good relationship as siblings? At that time, wouldn't you be like a pig looking in the mirror, no longer human? Left Guardian was silent for a moment, then bowed slightly, Young master is right. Just now this subordinate was rude, please forgive me young master. As he said this, he bowed respectfully again. Yi Xian patted Left Guardian's shoulder, It's a small matter. I am not a narrow-minded person. The Left Protector felt relieved. Meanwhile, Yi Xian said, From now on, I'll take over the Grand Heavenly Realm. In the name of my father, I dismiss the Realm Lord of the Great Heaven Realm. From now on, I am the realm lord of the great heaven realm. What kind of expression is that? Is there a problem with the son inheriting his father's business? Left Guardian. 7017K. Chapter 2392. Hearing Yi Xian's words, the left protector was put in a difficult position. Young master. Well. Yi Xian smiled. What belongs to my father is mine. If the lord of the great heaven realm is not willing, ask him to look for me. After saying that, he walked away with Qingqiu. The left protector sighed softly. What was going on? In fact, they could not figure out the Yang clan's attitude. Who did the Yang clan want to make the crown prince? If they wanted Yi Xian to be the crown prince, but the green shirt sword master had never announced it to the Yang clan. He had not even mentioned Yi Xian's existence. In the hearts of many Yang clan members, they naturally recognized Yang Nianxue. After all, Yang Nianxue had grown up in the Yang clan and had always followed the green shirt sword master. As for Yi Xian, he had only recently appeared out of nowhere. If they recognized Yi Xian, they were afraid of angering the big shots on Yang Nianxue's side. After all, Yi Xian had many super big shots who supported her. Difficult. The left protector sighed softly. Yi Xian did not care about the left protector and the others. He had already entered the Great Heaven City with Qingqiu. The Great Heaven City was the most prosperous city in the entire Great Heaven realm. After entering the city, the view was extremely wide. The buildings in the city were very far apart, so at first glance, it was very spacious and comfortable. And Yi Xian also found that there were a lot of people in the city. This city could accommodate at least tens of millions of people. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Left protector." As soon as he said that, the left protector appeared next to Yi Xian. After the conversation just now, the left protector's attitude towards Yi Xian had changed greatly. As Yi Xian had said, no matter how Yi Xian and Yang Nianxue fought, it was not something that small fries like them could meddle in. If that was the case, why should they choose sides? After all, the right protector had already been killed. Yi Xian glanced at the people in the city and said, "Does the Yang clan select outstanding geniuses from this city every year?" The left protector nodded. Yes. What a powerful force needs is fresh blood. I don't know about other places, but in the Great Heaven realm, we pick out some outstanding geniuses and monsters every few years and nurture them. Yi Xian nodded. He turned his head and stared at the left protector. Your realm lord is still not coming over to see me? The left protector bitterly smiled. The realm lord is not in the city. Before young master came, he had already left the Great Heaven realm. Yi Xian frowned. Left? The left protector nodded. Yi Xian was a little curious. Where did he go? The left protector shook his head. I don't know. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian smiled and said, he wouldn't be deliberately avoiding me, right? The left protector smiled awkwardly and did not dare to reply. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Let's go to the city governor's estate. The left protector hurriedly nodded. All right. As soon as he finished speaking, he led the way. Meanwhile, Qingqiu suddenly said, Big brother, I'll go take a look. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, Be careful. Qingqiu smiled. All right. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and vanished. Yi Xian glanced at the left protector, and the left protector hurriedly waved his hand. In next to no time, 3 High God Realm experts followed behind him. In next to no time, the left protector led Yi Xian to the city governor's estate. Needless to say, the city governor's estate was really huge. It was like an imperial palace, and it was extremely luxurious. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings and said, It's huge. Not bad. It's suitable for an academy. The left protector was slightly embarrassed and did not dare to speak. Meanwhile, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he gazed coldly at Yi Xian. This is the city governor's estate. Outsiders are not allowed to trespass here. The left protector hurriedly said, Brother Zhou, this is the young master. The old man's face remained expressionless. No one. The left protector's face instantly froze. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, Left protector, is the Grand Celestial Dimension considered to belong to the Yang clan? The left protector replied, Of course. Yi Xian nodded, and then he suddenly vanished on the spot. A ray of light appeared in front of Yi Xian, and then Yi Xian instantly appeared in outer space. A moment later, four afterimages crisscrossed Brother Zhou's body. Instant of invincibility. The moment Yi Xian unleashed this attack, Mr. Zhou's expression changed drastically. He opened his palm, and a black shield suddenly appeared in front of him. However, as the four afterimages appeared, the black shield suddenly shattered. Following that, four rays of sword gleam crisscrossed Mr. Zhou's body and slashed him. Hiss! Hiss! Four ripping sounds resounded, and Brother Zhou and his shield were sliced into a few pieces that scattered on the ground. Blood splattered everywhere. At this moment, Yi Xian had already appeared not far behind Lao Zhou. Sheath his sword. Yi Xian walked slowly towards the distance. Clean this place up. I don't like the smell of blood. The left protector was petrified on the spot. At this moment, the left protector was completely dumbfounded. Instant kill. One should know that Elder Zhou was a 5th-level upper immortal stage powerhouse. In the entire Grand Celestial Dimension, an expert of this level was second only to a Realm Lord. However, he was killed before he could even fight back against Yi Xian's terrifying attack. It was too terrifying. The left protector was terrified to the extreme. At this moment, he believed that even the Realm Lord would not be able to take that sword attack from Yi Xian, let alone him. The Sword Master's son. The left protector suddenly turned around and roared, Why aren't you cleaning up? Don't you know that the young master doesn't like the smell of blood? Soon, someone hurried over to clean up. As for Yi Xian, he slumped on the chair as soon as he entered the hall. Weak. He had used the instant of invincibility twice in a row in a short period of time. The consumption was too great. Based on his current strength, his limit should be 3 times. However, he could not predict the consequences if he used it again. Because he was already very weak now. However, with the instant of invincibility and the Qingxian sword, he was simply invincible. Not to mention these experts, even the modified Xiao Ta would not be able to withstand it. Perhaps only Aria's battle armor could barely withstand it. At this moment, the left protector appeared at the door. He bowed slightly. Young master. Yi Xian took out a pill and consumed it. Then, he said, Come in. The left protector walked into the hall. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's expression had returned to normal. Yi Xian said, I'm taking over the Grand Celestial Dimension. If anyone is dissatisfied, kill them for me. The left protector hesitated and said, Realm Lord, then, Yi Xian looked at the left protector calmly, if they are dissatisfied, then kill them too. The left protector was speechless. Yi Xian suddenly said, What is a world stronger than the Grand Celestial Dimension? The left protector said in a deep voice, That should be the middle world. There are super experts above the upper god realm there. Be it the upper god realm, the firmament realm, the Luo realm, or the Grand Celestial Dimension, they are all under the control of the middle world. Apart from that, as far as I know, the middle world controls about 100 universes similar to the Grand Celestial Dimension. The realm lord of the middle world, no, not the realm lord, but the universe god. A universe god is equivalent to a small duke in the secular world. With one command, he can mobilize countless troops and experts instantly. Universe God. Yi Xian smiled. The realm lord of the Grand Celestial Dimension went to the middle world, right? The left protector hesitated and nodded. Yi Xian chuckled and said softly, In that case, the universe gods in the middle world can barely touch the core circle of the Yang clan. Am I right? The left protector shook his head and smiled bitterly. I don't know about that. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said softly in his heart, Xiao Ta, you have stayed with Dad before. Do you know about the Yang clan? Xiao Ta said, I don't know. Yi Xian frowned. Xiao Ta said, Young master, let me tell you, the Yang clan's power was definitely not created by master. Master has no interest in creating a power. Hence, the one who created this power must be Mistress Su. If it was really created by Mistress Su, then Master Shui is really the legal heir. Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Xiao Ta said again, actually, young master, why do you care about the Yang clan? Don't forget, you still have Sister Tianming behind you. Comparing the Yang clan to Sister Tianming, under the situation where master doesn't make a move, isn't there a huge difference? Yi Xian was silent. Xiao Ta continued, but, I think, master should want you to inherit the Yang clan. Yi Xian said with a smile, why? Xiao Ta said, that ring, the ring that master left for you, was once worn by master. Obviously, his attitude is very clear. But, these fools' level is not high enough, they don't recognize this ring. I think, this ring, only the true core circle of the Yang clan will recognize, for example, the existence of Sister Tingyun's level. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, then, what do you think I should do now? If this continues, I think, I will have to kill a lot of people. What are you afraid of? Xiao Ta suddenly said angrily, young master, I really don't like you now. Did you read too much? Yi Xian was stunned. Xiao Ta continued to say angrily, when did you become so hot-blooded? What about the Yi Xian who killed people when he had a bad thought in Qingqing? What about the Yi Xian who dared to slaughter millions of living beings for his sister? You have to remember, whether it is this great celestial realm or that middle world, they are just subordinates of the Yang clan. In the words of the Milky Way, they are just workers for our family. A worker dares to bully the boss son, isn't this going against the heavens? It is not you who wants to mess with them, it is they who want to mess with you first. What are you afraid of? Kill them. Exterminate their clan. Kill a group of strong people, then they will know to respect you. What are you still worried about? Yi Xian was silent. Xiao Ta continued, you are the young master, you are master's son, you are the legal heir of the Yang clan, but they do not recognize you. What is this? Young master, you have to remember one thing, and that is, these people, without master's protection, they are not even worth a fart. And why did master agree to them creating this Yang clan? Why did he give you that ring? Very obviously, he wanted to help you. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if master did not have this kind of thought, then you do not need to care so much. If people do not offend us, we will not offend them. Not to mention a few insignificant subordinates of the Yang clan, even if master wants to harm you, then you have to kill him. What is wrong with killing one's father? Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Dedeabi suddenly said, Broken Ta, let me remind you, you have to think before you speak. You. Xiao Ta suddenly said angrily, you broken pen, don't talk to me. If you have the guts, you would not have been scared by Sister Tianming's sword and did not dare to speak. F***ck. Dedeabi said angrily, Broken Ta, don't challenge my bottom line, do you believe that I will immediately arrange for you? Please arrange for me. Xiao Ta said angrily, other than Sister Tianming, who am I afraid of? Dedeabi still wanted to say something, but Xiao Ta suddenly said, don't talk nonsense, you and your master together. I am invincible, you master and servant do as you please. Dedeabi. 7017K. Chapter 2393. Hearing Xiao Ta's words, Yi Xian was completely speechless. This small pagoda couldn't have been drinking, right? So arrogant? This was ridiculous. Dedeabi had already started fighting with Xiao Ta. Yi Xian ignored the two fellows. After strolling around the city lord's mansion, he finally came to a study. This was the study of the Lord of the Great Heaven Realm. There were all kinds of books. Yi Xian walked up to a bookshelf, took out an ancient book, and opened it. Shiqiu. This was an ancient book about the history of the Great Heaven universe. Every universe had its own history. To Yi Xian's disappointment, he wanted to see the history of the entire universe. From Qing, he knew that there were two universes. One was the current universe, and the other was the boundless universe. What was the history of the current universe? Yi Xian was very curious. Unfortunately, there was no such book in the entire study. Most of the ancient books here only recorded the history of the Great Heaven universe and some people. However, he had gained a lot because he now had a general understanding of the entire Great Heaven universe. Because of this, he decided not to go to the medium world. Instead, he stayed here to develop the Great Heaven realm. The Great Heaven realm was too big. After coming out of the study, Yi Xian began to take over the Great Heaven realm. The whole Great Celestial realm was shocked by Yi Xian's admission. Young master. This place was not like other small places. Therefore, everyone knew of Yi Xian's existence. However, Yi Xian's sudden takeover made many people uncomfortable. Therefore, there were many who paid lip service to it. Great Heaven Hall. This Great Heaven Hall was the place where the Great Heaven realm usually discussed matters. At this moment, hundreds of people had gathered in the hall. These people were equivalent to secular officials and were in charge of the big and small matters of the Great Heaven realm. Inside the hall, everyone looked at Yi Xian, who was sitting in the seat of the Lord of the Great Heaven realm, with strange expressions. Beside Yi Xian was the left protector and messenger Zhang, who had just come out of seclusion. At this moment, Envoy Zhang was already a second-stage expert. In this Great Heaven realm, he was actually not considered to be at the top. Yi Xian glanced at the crowd below him, and then he said, "I'll take over the Grand Celestial Dimension in my father's name. From today onward, the Grand Celestial Dimension doesn't have a realm master, only a young master." With that, he swept his gaze across the crowd. "I'm done. Who agrees and who objects?" Who agreed? Who objected? As soon as he said this, the hall suddenly quietened down. Everyone looked at each other. The left protector immediately became nervous. He knew Yi Xian's temper and strength. This young master was not a pushover. At this moment, an old man and a middle-aged man walked out. The old man in the lead said, "I object, young master." Suddenly, the sword at Yi Xian's waist was unsheathed. Buzz! A sword cry resounded. Instant invincibility. At the instant that Yi Xian struck, the expressions of all the experts here changed. The old man who bore the brunt of the attack was even more shocked, and he hurriedly said, "I agree. Young master, I agree. I..." Hiss. Hiss. Before he could finish speaking, the old man's body had been sliced into pieces. Instantly killed and wiped out. Everyone, Yi Xian suddenly sighed in a low voice. "Why do you speak so slowly? Speak faster in your next life." Everyone, Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man who had walked out with the old man. "What do you want to say?" The middle-aged man's voice trembled. "Young master, will those who object die?" Yi Xian said seriously, "How is that possible? I'm not that kind of person." The middle-aged man hesitated for a moment, and then he pointed at the pool of blood in front of him. Then Yi Xian looked at the middle-aged man with a calm expression. "Do you want to talk about something else?" As he spoke, the green profound sword in his hands suddenly trembled. Seeing this, the middle-aged man's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly said, "Young master, I have no objections. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly." As he spoke, he retreated to the side, and cold sweat flowed down his back. This young master is not a good person. Yi Xian glanced at the people in the hall with a calm expression. "My father and I are both democratic people. If you have any objections, you can speak them out. Really? Everyone fell silent. Seeing that no one spoke, Yi Xian stood up and said, I now announce that I will establish an academy in the Great Heaven Realm. As he spoke, he turned to look at Emissary Zhang. I now appoint Emissary Zhang as the Lord of the Great Heaven Realm, and his salary will be doubled. Besides that, he doesn't need to listen to anyone else in the Yang clan besides me. Emissary Zhang was overjoyed when he heard this, and he hurriedly knelt on one knee. Thank you, young master. The Lord of the Great Heaven Realm. He knew that this was a great opportunity for him. The Great Heaven Realm was not something the Upper God Realm could compare to. After becoming the Lord of the Great Heaven Realm, he would have countless opportunities and resources. Of course, more importantly, Yi Xian obviously wanted to start cultivating his own confidence, and he would be Yi Xian's first confidant in the Yang clan. In the hall, everyone looked at each other. They were naturally not convinced by this Emissary Zhang. After all, although Yi Xian was the young master, Yi Xian did not have any position. Although they were not convinced, the generals tacitly did not say anything. They were afraid of death. Yi Xian looked at Emissary Zhang. You will handle the matters of the academy. If there is anything you don't understand, you can ask Qingqiu. She is the court head of Wuyuan. Emissary Zhang nodded. This subordinate understands. Yi Xian looked at the left protector. Help me inform the middle world that from now on, the Great Heaven Realm is under my control, not theirs. If they are not convinced, they can come and mess with me. After all, I am my father's only son. As long as they are not afraid that my father will die, they can do whatever they want. With that, he turned and left. The left protector was speechless. After Yi Xian left, Emissary Zhang asked everyone to stay. Emissary Zhang glanced at everyone and said indifferently, I know you are not convinced by me, but it doesn't matter. I don't need you to be convinced. I just need you to listen to my orders. I will say it here. If you dare to disobey any of my orders, I will advise the young master to dismiss all of you. And you will never be allowed to enter the Yang clan again. You know the temper of the young master. If he drives you out, I want to see who dares to accept you. Everyone was silent. Emissary Zhang continued, the first thing we need to do now is to establish an academy, Guanxian Academy. From now on, you will find all the learned people in the Great Heaven Realm, regardless of their realm, only their knowledge. Invite them to the City Lord's mansion. In addition, I need a large number of outstanding talents. Although everyone was not very convinced by Emissary Zhang, they still followed his instructions. No one wanted to provoke Yi Xian at this time. As for Yi Xian himself, he left the Great Heaven Realm and returned to Azure Province. However, this time, he did not go to the academy. Instead, he went to Tuoba Yan's palace. Some things did not have to be done often, but they could not be avoided. When there was a choice, one had to do it. If he was single, it would be a different story. In the middle world. At this moment, a meeting was held in the middle world. This meeting gathered hundreds of people. It could be said that all the influential people in the middle world were present. The Great Heaven Realm's Lord Zhang Feng was also present. In the hall, Zhang Feng's expression was extremely ugly. Because his fiefdom was gone. He had already received news that Yi Xian was now in control of the entire Great Heaven Realm. He dared not voice his anger. After all, he was the young master. He could only come to the middle world to seek help. At this moment, an old man appeared above the hall. Everyone present hurriedly bowed at the sight of this old man. Greetings, Lord C. Lord C. That was an existence that was beneath a single world god in the middle world. He was merely inferior to a world god. Lord C glanced at them and said, without the orders of a world god, no one is allowed to head to the middle world to act against the young master. He paused for a moment before he continued, all of you must obey the young master's orders. All of them were stunned when they heard this. Meanwhile, an old man suddenly spoke in a low voice, "Lord C, the young master is clearly acting rashly. Are we just going to allow him to do as he pleases?" Lord C gazed at the old man. "Then why don't you go kill him?" The old man's face froze. Lord C glanced coldly at them and said, "Remember that he's the young master. Even though the sword master didn't appoint him to any position, he's still the young master, and we can't go against him." The old man bowed slightly and didn't dare speak another word. Zhang Feng suddenly said, "What if he comes to the middle world and intends to take control of it?" The expressions of everyone within the hall became strange, and then they gazed at Lord C. Lord C fell silent for a moment before he said, "It's fine to play around, but it would be going too far if he goes too far." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. The corners of Zhang Feng's mouth curled up slightly. Obviously, the attitude of the middle world was that Yi Xian could play around in the middle world, but the middle world wasn't a place that Yi Xian could touch. Moreover, he knew that Yi Xian would come to the middle world sooner or later. The corners of Zhang Feng's mouth curled up slightly. After Lord C left the hall, he arrived at a dense forest, and there was a bamboo house behind the forest. Lord C arrived before the bamboo house and bowed slightly. "World God, should I report the young master?" After a short moment of silence, a voice resounded slowly from within the bamboo house. "There's no need." Lord C spoke in a low voice, "I've investigated. The young master is establishing some sort of academy, and he actually took the firmament world, upper god world, and heaven world for his own use to establish that academy of his. His actions," as he spoke, he frowned. After a moment of silence, the world god said, "We can't touch this person," but the others, hearing this, Lord C was stunned. Very quickly, he bowed slightly, "I understand." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Naturally, they couldn't touch Yi Xian, but what if someone else did? If the young master died at the hands of someone else, then what did it have to do with them? On the contrary, they could take revenge for the young master, and gain merit. Within the bamboo house, a voice suddenly rang out, "An illegitimate child, doesn't know how to endure and wants to directly take over. How ridiculous. P.S. I want to do it, but I know that I will definitely be scolded. I'm in a tough spot." Chapter 2394. Inside the palace. Yi Xian lay on the big bed with a naked Tuoba Yen in his arms. Tuoba Yen lay quietly in Yi Xian's arms with his eyes slightly closed. Yi Xian looked at the distant sky with a faint smile on his face. It was very comfortable. At this moment, Tuoba Yen suddenly said softly, "You're awake?" Yi Xian nodded. Tuoba Yen gently rubbed against Yi Xian's chest and said softly, "Do you want to continue sleeping?" Yi Xian laughed. "Okay." With that, he turned over. Soon, beautiful sounds rang out in the hall. As for the scale, everyone could imagine for themselves. Late in the morning. At noon, Yi Xian left the hall. He stood in front of the hall and looked up at the distant sky with a happy mood. At this moment, Tuoba Yen suddenly walked behind Yi Xian and gently wrapped her arms around Yi Xian's waist. Then, she leaned against Yi Xian and said softly, "Are you leaving?" Yi Xian nodded. Although the academy had Qingqiu, he could not leave everything to Qingqiu. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian opened his palm. The sword intent of the human world suddenly appeared in his hand. This sword intent was much stronger than before. It could be said that he could now easily kill a soul formation expert with his sword intent alone. If he used instant of invincibility, he could easily kill an exalted god. But he was only at the soul formation realm. His current goal was to become an exalted god. Thinking of this, Yi Xian opened his palm and a deity appeared in his hand. As if thinking of something, he suddenly said, "Brother Bai, how can I use you to observe the fate of others?" After a moment of silence, the deity said, "What are you going to do?" Yi Xian said with a smile, "Brother Bai, are you really that uncooperative?" Dedeabi was silent. Xiao Ta said, "Young master, this guy is irresponsible and hides everything from you. Just let it go. With me and little soul here, what value does this stupid pen have?" Yi Xian laughed. It seemed that Xiao Ta and Dedeabi were not on good terms. Dedeabi suddenly said, "The heavenly secret must not be revealed. Once it is revealed, it will backfire." Yi Xian was a little curious, by who? Dedeabi said in a deep voice, "Tendo." Dedeabi said softly, "I am not afraid of ordinary Tendo." The great Tao brush said softly, "I am naturally not afraid of ordinary heavenly Taos. However, there is a heavenly Tao that I have to fear. I am not afraid of ordinary Tendo. However, there is a Tendo that I have to be afraid of." Dedeabi said softly. The word Tao in the 6-syllable Sanskrit. This Tao is the head of all Tao. Tendo is under its jurisdiction. If I reveal the heavenly secret, I will also be arranged. Yi Xian asked, "Does it dare to arrange for me?" Dedeabi was silent for a moment and said, "It dare not." Yi Xian nodded, "So, do you understand?" Dedeabi, Yi Xian suddenly said, "I want to know Xiao Ta's future. Can you tell me about it?" Dedeabi was silent for a moment and said, "Die a horrible death." Yi Xian, Xiao Ta suddenly flew into a rage, F***ck. Soon, the pen and the tower began to fight again. Yi Xian was a little speechless. He realized that Xiao Ta and Dedeabi were at odds. At this moment, Tuoba Yen said softly, "When are you leaving?" Yi Xian collected his thoughts and said with a smile, "Can't bear for me to leave?" Tuoba Yen nodded. Yi Xian laughed, turned around, and walked toward the inner hall with Tuoba Yen in his arms. At the same time, a pen and a tower flew out of the palace. Several days later, Yi Xian left the palace. This time, unlike before, he walked out holding the wall. Yi Xian walked to the stone steps and sat down. His whole body slumped on the stone steps. Yi Xian looked at the sky and said softly, "I'm tired." There were some things that needed to be done, but they could not be done every day. At this moment, Dedeabi flew back in front of Yi Xian, and Xiao Ta also flew back in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at Dedeabi and Xiao Ta. He realized that this Dedeabi was not in his original body and could not beat Xiao Ta. It should be said that he could not do anything to Xiao Ta. Xiao Ta's defense was only second to Arya's armor. At this moment, Xiao Ta suddenly laughed and said, "Stupid pen, I am invincible, invincible." "Ha!" Yi Xian, Dedeabi said in a deep voice, "Do you dare to come to the Milky Way?" Xiao Ta laughed, "My sister Tianming is in the Milky Way. If you have the ability, go and fight her." Dedeabi said angrily, F***ck, can you stop mentioning others? If you have the guts, come to the Milky Way alone and fight me. If I don't kill you, I am not a pen. Xiao Ta sneered, "Then why don't you come here?" Dedeabi said angrily, "I can't come out." Xiao Ta asked, "Why can't you come out?" After a moment of silence, Dedeabi said, "Don't talk so much nonsense. Just say that you don't want to come to the Milky Way." Xiao Ta said, "I'm not coming." Dedeabi said sarcastically, "Are you afraid?" Xiao Ta laughed, "No matter how much nonsense you talk, you can't change the fact that my master is more powerful than your master." Dedeabi said lightly, "Stupid pen, I have to tell you, your master is powerful, but you are not. Do you know who my master is? Do you know why you disappeared for so long last time? Do you know? Do you really know?" Xiao Ta was silent. Suddenly, he regretted it a little. At this moment, he realized that he was a little arrogant just now. It was fine to provoke this Dedeabi, but this Dedeabi's master. After a moment of silence, Xiao Ta said, "I will follow the young master will protect me." He was a little lacking in confidence. Yi Xian needed someone to take care of him. Dedeabi sneered, "Just you wait." Just you wait to disappear again. Xiao Ta, Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Then, he entered Xiao Ta. After entering Xiao Ta, Yi Xian swallowed some spiritual energy. After his body recovered, he decided that he had to recultivate his body in the future. Otherwise, some things could not be done for too long. It would take at least 10 days before he could do his best. Recollecting his thoughts, Yi Xian took out Dedeabi. Using Dedeabi, he directly reached the high god realm. Now that he had Xiao Ta, he did not need to be afraid of an unstable foundation because he had enough time to stabilize his realm. Yi Xian immediately sensed a terrifying power after reaching the high god level. At the same time, his human realm sword spirit suddenly boiled up at this moment. High god realm, what he needed was the power of faith. The faith of all living beings, then he would become a god. High god realm. After Yi Xian's power of faith boiled, he began to crazily swallow the universe veins. The universe veins in his body began to disappear at a very terrifying speed. In the end, they turned into countless spiritual energy and entered his body. Boom! The world in Xiao Ta's body gradually trembled. The aura was too strong. Yi Xian clenched his fists tightly. Terrifying auras continuously surged out of his body. These powerful auras became stronger and stronger. In the end, the space-time that Yi Xian was in directly boiled, but very quickly, it returned to normal. Xiao Ta stabilized the surrounding space. At this time, Yi Xian's human world sword intent suddenly surged. When the human world sword intent surged, the surrounding space began to tremble again. Human world sword intent was equivalent to the power of faith. At this time, Yi Xian's sword intent was slowly changing. Outside Xiao Ta's body. Somewhere in space, a space-time suddenly split open. The next moment, a group of black-robed people walked out. The black-robed person in the lead held a long spear in his hand. This black-robed person in the lead looked around. Finally, he looked down. Below us is Qingzhou. Beside the black-robed person, an old man said respectfully, replying to Kill Master, it is. Kill Master frowned, the civilization level of this universe is so low. The old man nodded. Yes. After a moment of silence, the Kill Master said, that universe god offered such a high price for us to kill a young man. Come to think of it, the young man is not simple. As he spoke, he looked at the old man. Have you investigated his background? The old man smiled and said, I have. There's a woman in a plain dress behind this person. I've asked the expert of the drunken immortal inn who once fought that woman here. That woman was only a great sword immortal at that time. Even though so many years have passed, to what extent could she have grown? So, there's nothing to worry about. There was nothing to worry about. 7017K. Chapter 2395. Slaughter Master looked down in silence, and he still felt slightly uneasy. Killing Yi Xian would give him 3 billion universe veins. This was the price that the medium world had offered. Yi Xian was merely at the soul transformation realm, but the medium world had offered such a high price. This was extremely unusual. However, he couldn't refuse the temptation of 3 billion universe veins. Because cultivation really required money. Especially when he had a group of brothers with him, and 3 billion universe veins could allow them to not have to worry about money for a very long time in the future. 3 billion. Slaughter Master restrained his thoughts and looked down. He was just about to speak when a middle-aged man appeared not too far away from Slaughter Master. It was Si Juanja. Slaughter Master looked at Si Juanja and didn't speak. He was secretly vigilant in his heart. He naturally didn't completely trust Si Juanja. In his line of work, he had to be vigilant against everyone. Si Juanja said, we've already sealed off all the space outside this universe. No one will be able to rush here for 4 hours. All of you only have 4 hours, understand? Slaughtermaster's eyes narrowed slightly. What exactly is his identity? Si Juanja had an expressionless face. Money. Do you want to earn it? Slaughtermaster fell silent. Si Juanja opened his palm, and a spatial ring slowly floated over to Slaughtermaster. There were 5 billion universe veins within the spatial ring. Slaughtermaster fell silent when he saw these 5 billion universe veins. Si Juanja said, 4 hours. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished. Slaughtermaster's expression grew even more solemn. Meanwhile, an old man by Slaughtermaster's side spoke in a low voice. Slaughtermaster, this matter is slightly strange. Slaughtermaster's face remained expressionless. I know. The old man hesitated for a moment and said, should we kill him? Slaughtermaster's expression was extremely unsightly as he gazed at the spatial ring in front of him. 5 billion. He was really tempted. However, his intuition told him that if he attacked, then he would probably incur enormous karma. The medium world didn't dare to kill Yi Xian, and this proved many things. Right at this moment, the space before them suddenly trembled. In the next moment, a strand of sword light descended in front of Slaughtermaster and the others. The sword light dispersed, and a young man appeared in front of Slaughtermaster and the others. The person who came was Yi Xian. Seeing Yi Xian, the Kill Master frowned. You can sense us. Their group had concealed their auras when they came. Yi Xian sized up Slayer Lord and the others, then smiled and said, you're from the middle world? Slayer Master fell silent. At this moment, Yi Xian shook his head. No. If I were a world deity from the middle world, would definitely not do such a stupid thing. If he killed me, he would definitely not be able to escape responsibility. If I were him, I would definitely find an external force to kill him. So, you're assassins hired by Middle World to kill me, right? Kill Master, Yi Xian smiled and said, looks like I guessed right. As he spoke, he spread his arms. Kill Master, come and kill me. I won't resist. Don't worry, there's no one behind me, and I don't have any special identity. If you kill me, you won't be stained with any great karma. The Slayer leader and the others were silent, their expressions turning strange. Yi Xian laughed, you don't dare? Kill Master said in a deep voice, are you provoking me? Yi Xian laughed, Kill Master, before you came to kill me, didn't you investigate my identity? Kill Master said, I came in a hurry, so I didn't investigate properly. Yi Xian smiled, I am the young master of Yang Clan. Young master of Yang Clan. Hearing that, Kill Master's eyes suddenly shrank. You. How is it possible? If you were the young master of Yang Clan, how would the middle world dare to kill you? Are they crazy? Yi Xian said with a smile, think about it yourself. Kill Master kept silent for a while, then said, from what I know, Yang Clan has a Missy. That universe deity and the others are following her, and you, then, he didn't continue. Yi Xian nodded, yes. Kill Master was silent, his face extremely gloomy. Yang Clan's internal strife. That was simply ridiculous. At that moment, he was so angry that he wanted to kill someone. If he were to get involved in the Yang Clan's internal strife, wouldn't he be courting death? Even if he killed Yi Xian, he definitely wouldn't be able to live, and he might even be bitten by the middle world. Too sinister. F***ck. Kill Master couldn't help but scold. No matter who it was, to be schemed against, and to be schemed against to death, he would definitely be unhappy. Yi Xian suddenly said, do you want to fight? Kill Master looked at Yi Xian, what do you mean? Yi Xian blinked, I want to fight for the Crown Prince position, so follow me. When I become the Crown Prince, all of you will be the founding heroes. Kill Master, an old man next to Kill Master said in a deep voice, what do you have to fight with your sister? Yi Xian laughed, then pointed at Dedeabi on his waist, see this pen? Dedeabi. Seeing the Dedeabi on Yi Xian's waist, the old man's expression suddenly became solemn. Yi Xian smiled, how many people do you have? Kill Master was silent for a moment, then said, 12 people, all assassins, and each of them is in the upper god realm. Each of them is in the upper god realm. Yi Xian's expression changed. Finally, a powerful super force appeared. I must recruit them for my own use. I have to trick them. Yi Xian said seriously, how should I address you? Kill Master was silent for a moment, then said, Kill Master. Yi Xian said with a smile, do you want to join the Yang clan? Of course, with your strength, you can definitely join the Yang clan, but if you are not important after entering the Yang clan, to you, you might as well not enter, right? Kill Master nodded, yes. Just like what Yi Xian said, they could actually join the Yang clan, but if there is no one above them, even if they join the Yang clan, there is no meaning, because if they join, they can only be hired thugs. Yi Xian said with a smile, follow me, when I am in power, you will all be the founding heroes of the country. Kill Master frowned, can you win against your sister? Yi Xian laughed. Why don't you have the guts to fight? If you don't, the upper god realm is your limit, right? Kill Master was silent. Yi Xian opened his palm, and Xiao Ta slowly floated in front of Kill Master, go in and feel it. Kill Master was a little wary. Yi Xian smiled, I am a scholar, what evil intentions can I have? Kill Master fell silent for a moment, and then he entered Xiao Ta. Not long after, he appeared again, and this time, his eyes were filled with shock. Yi Xian said with a smile, this pagoda is called the Primordial Pagoda, and it once went through life and death with my father. Now, my father has given it to me, isn't it obvious? He is already prepared to let me inherit the Yang clan when he is 100 years old. As soon as he finished speaking, he frowned, because these words don't seem to be very appropriate. Kill Master's expression became slightly strange. Yi Xian continued, Kill Master, look carefully. As soon as he finished speaking, his aura suddenly rose explosively, and in the blink of an eye, his aura directly reached the upper god realm. Upper god. Kill Master's pupils constricted when he saw this, You are actually at the upper god realm. Needless to say, he was really shocked at this moment. Such a young upper god realm? Yi Xian said again, Kill Master, have you seen an 18-year-old upper god realm, 18 years old? Kill Master and the rest were stunned. After a while, Kill Master looked at Yi Xian, shocked, You? 18 years old? Yi Xian nodded, yes. Kill Master was a little doubtful. Yi Xian smiled, I am a swordsman and a scholar, why would I lie to you? Kill Master was silent. Yi Xian continued, do you see the Daebi on my waist? Kill Master glanced at the Daebi on Yi Xian's waist and nodded. Yi Xian smiled, why did the Daebi follow me? Because a genius like me is hard to come by even in billions of years. Many years ago, the Daebi suddenly found me and said that he wanted to follow me. No matter how I rejected him, it was useless. Sigh. F***ck. The Daebi's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind, You. Yi Xian ignored the Daebi and continued, Kill Master, there are many choices in life, some of which will change your fate, and now, there is a chance in front of you. Saying that, he picked up the Daebi and said, You should know that this Daebi can see the fate of all living beings. I used it to look at your fate just now, do you want to know? The Daebi, Kill Master said in a deep voice, Look at my fate? Yi Xian nodded, yes. There are two outcomes in your fate, one is to live an ordinary life, and the upper god realm is your end. The other is to follow me. After following me, your fate will be changed by me, and the upper god realm is not your end, but your starting point. Kill Master was silent. Damn, is this guy trying to fool me? Do I look stupid? Yi Xian smiled, even the Daebi is following me, how are you compared to the Daebi? Kill Master glanced at Yi Xian and said, We will consider it. Yi Xian smiled, no need to consider. I don't like people who are indecisive. You can leave on your own. Saying that, he turned and left. Looking at Yi Xian leaving in the distance, the karmic master was silent. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and a black token appeared in his hand. Soon, the two mysterious experts from Celestial Treasure Pavilion appeared beside Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression was calm, informed the presidents of the Upper God World's Immortal Treasure Pavilion, the Lower World's Immortal Treasure Pavilion, the Firmament World's Immortal Treasure Pavilion, and the Great Heaven World's Immortal Treasure Pavilion. Tell them to bring their High God Realm experts to the Great Heaven World immediately. As he spoke, a sinister glint flashed in his eyes. His eyes gradually turned red. Send another order to the Middle World. When I, Yi Xian, arrive in the Middle World, if I do not see the world deities and experts of the Middle World kneeling before me, this daddy will slaughter all 10 of their clans. Even if my father appears, he won't be able to save them. I said it. Xiao Ta suddenly said, Young master. They are from the Yang clan, you want to slaughter them. Yi Xian didn't even turn his head. They can disown me, but they can't kill me. Since they want to kill me, not to mention the Yang clan, even if it's my own sister or father, I will still kill them. P.S. When there are few updates, you will be scolded no matter what you say. 7017K. Chapter 2396. Xiao Ta fell silent. He knew that the young master was really angry. The young master's character had changed a lot since he started studying. However, the hot-bloodedness in his bones was still there. The fact that the medium world had sent people to kill him had obviously infuriated him. After receiving Yi Xian's orders, the two experts from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion retreated silently. They wouldn't question Yi Xian's orders at all, and they would do whatever Yi Xian said. At the side, the killer leader watched as Yi Xian disappeared into the distance, and his heart was extremely conflicted. Needless to say, he was really conflicted at this moment. Should I follow him? He was actually very conflicted, and he didn't have any confidence in his heart. Because following Yi Xian was equivalent to being dragged into the internal strife of the Yang clan. Under such circumstances, it was very likely that they would become sacrifices. After all, the Yang clan wasn't an ordinary clan. In such a terrifying clan, if none of them survived, then they would be doomed eternally. Of course, as Yi Xian had said, if Yi Xian really succeeded, then they would be able to change their fates. At the same time that they had extremely high benefits, they also had extremely high risks. After a long time, the killer leader sighed softly. In the end, he gave up. He didn't want to gamble. He might be able to change his fates if he took a gamble, but he might also lose everything. There was nothing wrong with the current situation. Even though it was slightly ordinary, it was very stable. At least he didn't have to take risks, and he didn't have to be on tenterhooks. The killer leader opened his palm and said, Return the spatial ring to the medium world. We won't take this mission anymore. As soon as he finished speaking, he passed the spatial ring to the old man beside him, and then he turned around and left. The two mysterious experts from the Celestial Treasure Pavilion immediately got into action after they received the order. In next to no time, the branch presidents of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion personally led the experts of the pavilion to the heavenly realm. Who in the Celestial Treasure Pavilion didn't know Yi Xian now? He was a man who had an intimate relationship with the pavilion leader. After they received Yi Xian's order, the branch presidents didn't hesitate at all, and they directly led the experts of the pavilion to the heavenly realm. The heavenly realm. Qing Qiu was lying on the chair that Yi Xian usually sat on, and she was reading. The emissary stood respectfully to one side. In fact, compared to Yi Xian, he was more afraid of Qing Qiu. This little girl was not just an ordinary kind of scary. At this time, Qing Qiu suddenly said, The middle world sent someone to kill my brother? Emissary Zhang quickly nodded. Yes. Qing Qiu remained expressionless and said nothing. Emissary Zhang hesitated for a moment and said, The young master has gone to the medium world. Qing Qiu nodded. I'll go with him. Emissary Zhang smiled bitterly. There are experts above the supreme deity level in the middle world. I think, Qing Qiu suddenly asked, are the masters above the supreme deity very powerful? Emissary Zhang was stunned. Isn't this powerful? Qing Qiu shook his head with a smile. Anyone in this realm is nothing but an ant. As she spoke, she paused for a moment and said, except for my brother. Emissary Zhang. Qing Zhou. Inside the palace, Tuoba Yen looked at Yi Xian. Are you leaving? Yi Xian nodded. I'm going to do something. After a moment of silence, Tuoba Yen said, when are you coming back? Yi Xian smiled. The Qingxian sword is in my hands. I can come back at any time. Tuoba Yen suddenly kissed Yi Xian and said softly, I'll wait for you. Yi Xian's lips suddenly curled up, and his smile was somewhat devilish. As if sensing some changes in Yi Xian, Tuoba Yen blushed slightly. You, Yi Xian laughed, and the two disappeared on the spot at the same time. At the same time, Dedeabi and Xiao Ta flew out of the palace. Xiao Ta, Dedeabi. A few days later, Yi Xian left the palace. When Yi Xian returned to the great celestial realm, many experts from the Immortal Treasure Pavilion had gathered there. Emissary Zhang came before Yi Xian and said respectfully, Greetings, young master. Yi Xian said, How many great godly realm experts do we have now? Emissary Zhang said in a deep voice, including the great celestial realm experts, there are a total of 26. 26. Yi Xian looked at Emissary Zhang. How does it compare to the middle world? Emissary Zhang hesitated and said, the difference is too big. The middle world has at least 50 great godly realm experts. Apart from that, they can also mobilize great godly realm experts from other worlds. It can be said that a middle world universe deity can mobilize at least a few hundred great godly realm experts in a very short time. Yi Xian nodded. Understood. Emissary Zhang wanted to say something but stopped. Yi Xian smiled. Don't be afraid. Emissary Zhang shook his head. I'm not afraid. I'm angry. Young master, how dare they send people to kill you? They are just workers for the Yang clan. How dare they send people to kill you? I'm angry. Yi Xian laughed. I'm angry too. So, kill them. Emissary Zhang said in a deep voice, kill them. Kill them all. Yi Xian smiled and then looked at Qing Qiu. Girl, Qing Qiu suddenly said, I'll go with you. Yi Xian hesitated. We still need you here, Qing Qiu interrupted Yi Xian. I'll go with you. Very determined. Yi Xian thought for a while and then nodded. Okay. Hearing this, Qing Qiu suddenly smiled sweetly. Yi Xian suddenly looked at Qing Qiu and then smiled. You are at the Divine Transformation Realm? Qing Qiu nodded. Yes. Yi Xian laughed. I'm finally a little higher than you. Ha. Qing Qiu suddenly snapped her fingers. Boom. In an instant, Qing Qiu's aura suddenly skyrocketed from the Divine Transformation Realm to the High God Realm. Yi Xian's smile froze. 10,000 horses were galloping in his heart. On the side, Emissary Zhang was also petrified. He suddenly felt a little suffocated. Cultivation? Damn it. Look at her. She didn't even need to cultivate. She broke through directly. The more Emissary Zhang thought about it, the angrier he got. His heart couldn't take it. Qing Qiu blinked. Brother, what's wrong? Yi Xian hesitated and then said, You broke through just like that? Qing Qiu nodded. Yes. Yi Xian frowned slightly. You don't need the time vein? You don't need to comprehend it? Qing Qiu was a little confused. Isn't it a simple thing to break through? What do you need it for? Yi Xian, Emissary Zhang's expression was stiff like a statue. Yi Xian still couldn't understand. Girl, why did you break through so easily? It's not normal. Qing Qiu thought for a while and then said, I might be a genius. Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. You mean we are too stupid? Qing Qiu smiled. I am not stupid. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Then tell me, why did you break through with a snap of your fingers? Qing Qiu was silent. Yi Xian said softly, can't you tell me? Qing Qiu shook her head. I'm thinking about how to fool you. Yi Xian, Qing Qiu suddenly smiled. Brother, a long time ago, I was very, very powerful. The invincible kind. Yi Xian was silent for a while and then said, I understand. Qing Qiu smiled. Anyway, in my heart, brother is the most powerful. Yi Xian gently rubbed Qing Qiu's little head and then said with a smile. Let's go and fight with brother. The corners of Qing Qiu's mouth lifted slightly. All right. Yi Xian directly led everyone to the middle world. On the way, Lan Qing, the branch president of Immortal Treasure Pavilion, gathered a group of branch presidents. He looked at everyone and then said in a deep voice. Everyone, this time we are going to target the middle world, and behind the middle world is the Yang clan. Do you know? Everyone nodded and looked a little dignified. Not to mention the Yang clan behind them, even a middle world is not easy to deal with. One must know that the universe gods of the middle world can mobilize the experts of other worlds. Once hundreds of upper god realm experts are mobilized, at that time, they will be completely useless. Lan Qing said in a deep voice. Of course, we don't need to be afraid. Because young Master Yi is the young master of the Yang clan, they will not dare to kill young Master Yi. However, they will definitely dare to kill us, so this time we will go with young Master Yi, we must. At this moment, Yi Xian's voice suddenly sounded, President Lan Qing, don't worry, I will not let you become cannon fodder. Lan Qing turned around and looked. Not far away, Yi Xian slowly walked over. Seeing Yi Xian, Lan Qing smiled bitterly. Young Master Yi. Yi Xian smiled. Don't worry, when we arrive in the middle world, I will not let you become cannon fodder. Lan Qing nodded. I believe in young Master Yi's character, but young Master Yi, have you ever thought that since they dare to send people to kill you, it proves that they have decided to shed all pretense of cordiality with you? Speaking of this, he paused and said. Can you contact the Yang clan's higher-ups? Yi Xian said with a smile, no need to contact me. Lan Qing was stunned. Yi Xian chuckled. Why do you want to contact the Yang clan? Lan Qing was silent. Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the depths of the distant starry sky, his eyes gradually turning cold. Middle world. The matter of Yi Xian and the others rushing to the middle world was already known by the middle world. Inside a great hall, the powerhouses of the middle world had already gathered. Everyone's expression was a bit ugly. Yi Xian. They didn't expect that Yi Xian would really come to the middle world. Most importantly, the middle world had sent someone to pass an order to the middle world. When he, Yi Xian, came to the middle world, if the powerhouses of the middle world didn't kneel in front of him, then he, Yi Xian, would slaughter the entire clan. Slaughter the entire clan. One has to say, everyone was still very angry. Although they were nothing in the Yang clan, in this universe, they were the top group of people. When had they ever been humiliated like this? At this time, Si Juanjia suddenly appeared in the hall. Seeing Si Juanjia, everyone hurriedly saluted. Si Juanjia's expression was calm. I heard that the young master is coming. What do you think? Everyone fell silent. Si Juanjia spoke indifferently. Immediately send the order to seal off the middle world and all the spacetime that leads to the outside universe. No news can leave the middle world. Besides that, immediately send the order to the realm lords of the various worlds to rush over here within 2 hours. Everyone was slightly stunned. Why would I send the realm lords here? Meanwhile, Si Juanja continued, just say that someone is pretending to be the young master. Pretending to be the young master. Everyone in the hall instantly came to an understanding. Chapter 2397. Impersonating the young master. There had to be a reasonable reason to deal with Yi Xian. Impersonating the young master was undoubtedly the best reason. After all, the sword master had never personally acknowledged Yi Xian in the Yang clan. Under such circumstances, they could completely refuse to acknowledge Yi Xian's identity. After killing Yi Xian, they could just find a random reason to push it onto someone else. Wouldn't that be the end of it? Of course, there were still some people who were worried. After all, they were killing the young master, not some nobody. An old man walked out and said solemnly, Si Juanja, we didn't know about the sword master's attitude towards the young master. Hearing this, everyone's expressions became solemn again. What position did Yi Xian occupy in the sword master's heart? If the young master was very important in the sword master's heart, wouldn't they be finished? Si Juanja said indifferently, we've already investigated. Yi Xian is just an illegitimate child. Isn't it normal for the sword master to have thousands of children? Everyone, Si Juanja continued, think about it. If Yi Xian really held some weight in the sword master's heart, would the sword master have ignored him for so many years? Would he have left him alone? Would he have never mentioned him in the Yang clan? Everyone fell silent. They had to admit that Si Juanja's words made sense. Because they realized that the sword master really had never mentioned Yi Xian in the Yang clan. Seeing everyone's expressions, Si Juanja continued, of course, if you have any concerns, it's easy. When he comes, all of you can kneel in front of the city gates and beg for his forgiveness. Wouldn't that be the end of it? After saying this, he sneered. Hearing this, everyone's expressions became ugly. Kneel in front of the city gates and beg for forgiveness? They definitely couldn't do that. Si Juanja continued, did you all see what happened to the Great Heaven Domain's lord? After Yi Xian took over the Great Heaven Domain, he immediately occupied it and even wanted to set up an academy. Are you all willing to give up your power? At this moment, an old man suddenly said fiercely, this person pretended to be the Yang clan's young master. He should be killed. Kill him. Everyone in the hall echoed in agreement. Submitting to Yi Xian would mean giving up their rights. This was something they were unwilling to do. Seeing everyone agree, Si Juanja nodded slightly as a smile appeared in his eyes. Although this person is really the son of the sword master has never appeared in the Yang clan. Moreover, who doesn't know that the next patriarch of the Yang clan is the eldest young lady? If we kill this Yi Xian, even if the higher-ups blame us, eldest miss will protect us. Young miss. The expressions of everyone instantly eased up greatly when they heard Si Juanja. With the protection of the eldest miss, the pressure on them was greatly relieved. After all, the eldest miss, Yang Nianshua's prestige in the clan was very high. After all, the eldest miss was the biological daughter of matriarch Su. Si Juanja raised his head and looked outside the hall, his expression icy cold. He's just an illegitimate child. Why should we fear him? Everyone in the hall nodded. In a corner, a middle-aged man quietly retreated. This middle-aged man was also a world lord, and his name was Qiu Ji. After the middle-aged man retreated, his entire being was filled with terror. He felt that things weren't that simple. Illegitimate child? Even if he was an illegitimate child, he wasn't someone they could kill indiscriminately. Moreover, according to his investigation, this Yi Xian had the crazy demon bloodline. In other words, Yi Xian had awakened the crazy demon bloodline of the sword master, but this eldest miss hadn't. Qiu Ji looked around and then opened his palm. A voice transmission talisman turned into a flame and disappeared quietly. He felt that this matter wasn't reliable, so he had to inform the higher-ups. Killing the young master, to a certain extent, was already a rebellion. If one's strength was strong enough, it wasn't impossible to rebel. However, the problem was that in front of the entire Yang clan, they weren't even considered as ants. How could they rebel? It was like a village saying that they wanted to rebel. Wasn't this courting death? Qiuji looked at the distant starry sky, his eyes filled with worry. After Si Juanja left the hall, he came to the front of the bamboo house. Si Juanja slightly bowed. World God. A moment later, a voice came from the bamboo house. He's coming? Si Juanja nodded. At most an hour. World God was silent. Si Juanja wanted to say something but stopped. In fact, he was a little worried. After all, he was the young master. Even if he was an illegitimate child, he wasn't someone they could kill at will. At this moment, that world God suddenly said, "Worried?" Si Juanja nodded. World God calmly said, "After killing him, say that someone else killed him. Then isn't it settled?" Si Juanja was silent. Damn it. Were the higher-ups of the Yang clan so easy to fool? In fact, what he was most worried about was that until now, this world god hadn't shown up. Once they killed Yi Xian, this world god would push all the blame onto him and make him the scapegoat. Wouldn't that be the end of him? As if seeing Si Juanja's worry, that world god suddenly said, "Don't worry. If there isn't an order from the higher-ups, how would I dare to kill Yi Xian?" An order from the higher-ups. Hearing this, Si Juanja's expression changed. The higher-ups? Eldest Miss? World God was silent for a moment, then said, "Of course." Hearing this, Si Juanja's expression instantly relaxed. So it's Eldest Miss's order. If it's Eldest Miss's order, then it's easy. World God said, "Go." Si Juanja bowed slightly, understood. Then, he retreated. In the bamboo house, a middle-aged man suddenly stood up. This person was the Middle World Universe God. When the middle-aged man stood up, a shadow suddenly appeared not far away from him. Seeing this shadow, World God immediately bowed slightly, "Lord." The shadow was expressionless. The higher-ups ordered is simple: don't let that person live. World God was silent for a moment, then said, "Lord, he is the young master after all. Is it really okay to kill him?" Actually, he was also fearful. After all, he wasn't an idiot. However, he was also gambling. If he wanted to climb up, he could only please the higher-ups. Hence, he had to cooperate with the higher-ups. Lord said calmly, "What are you worried about?" World God was silent. "Don't you know what I'm worried about?" Lord chuckled, "Are you afraid that we will sacrifice you in the end and make you the scapegoat?" World God didn't speak. Lord said calmly, "Don't worry, the one who wants him dead is Eldest Mississippi. With Eldest Miss's protection, what are you afraid of?" Eldest Miss. Hearing this, World God's expression instantly relaxed. As long as it was Eldest Miss's order, then he wasn't afraid. Anyway, Eldest Miss would take care of everything. If not for Eldest Miss, he really wouldn't dare to kill Yi Xian. Yi Xian was easy to kill, but what would happen after he was killed? After all, he was the young master. After killing Yi Xian, someone had to take the blame. In other words, someone had to be the scapegoat. He was also afraid of being the scapegoat. Then, Lord said again, "Kill him, then you can leave the middle world and enter the Xian Pavilion." Xian Pavilion. Hearing this, World God's pupils suddenly shrank and his entire body trembled. Xian Pavilion, that was the place that he had dreamed of entering, but he had never dared to think about it. To enter that place, it was really difficult. As long as he entered that place, he could barely be considered to have come into contact with the real Yang clan. Now, they could barely be considered as the outer circle. But now, as long as he killed Yi Xian, he could enter that place. Meanwhile, the Lord said, "This is your only chance. Just wait and see." Then, his body gradually became illusory. World God bowed slightly, "Goodbye, Lord." When Lord disappeared completely, World God kept quiet for a while and then turned to leave. He had made his decision. In an unknown starry sky, an elder suddenly appeared in the starry sky. The person who came was Lord. Lord looked at the starry sky far away and bowed slightly. Yuan sure. After a while, a voice was heard from the starry sky. Are you done? Lord nodded. Yes, I am. Then, he wanted to say something but stopped. Yuan sure said faintly, are you worried? Lord nodded quickly. Yes. Yuan sure, he is the young master after all. Will there be a problem if we kill him? Yuan sure kept quiet for a while and chuckled. Problem? What problem could there be? Do you know that this is eldest Mrs. Order? Eldest Mrs. Order. Lord was stunned at first, then he was overjoyed. Yuan sure, is it really eldest Mrs. Order? Yuan sure said calmly, of course. Do you think I will lie to you? Without eldest Mrs. Order, how would I dare to let you kill him? Lord nodded quickly. Yes, yes. I guess it's eldest Mrs. Order too. Yuan sure nodded. It's eldest Mrs. Order. Eldest Miss has been unhappy with him for a long time. So, go ahead and do it. Don't feel burdened. Lord bowed slightly. I understand. Yuan sure said, remember, you must eliminate the root of the problem. Don't leave any future trouble. If necessary, you can do it yourself. Lord nodded. I understand. I understand. Yuan sure said, I wish you success. Then, he disappeared completely. Lord kept quiet for a while before he turned and left. On a certain unknown mountain peak, a woman stood quietly. That person was Yang Nianxue. At that moment, Yang Nianxue's aura was as deep as the vast starry sky. It was obvious that her realm had reached upper god realm. Not far behind Yang Nianxue was an old man. The old man wore a black robe and held a sword in his hand. After a long time, Yang Nianxue suddenly opened her eyes. She took a deep breath and smiled. I broke through. Behind her, the old man bowed respectfully. Congratulations, young miss. Yang Nianxue stretched and smiled. I wonder how my little brother is doing. The old man said, young master should be doing well too. Yang Nianxue nodded. Although my little brother is a little flashy, he's very talented. As she spoke, she seemed to have thought of something and turned to look at the old man. Uncle Lu, help me investigate and see how my little brother is doing. If necessary, help him. After all, I only have this little brother and my father is letting him live. As his sister, I have to take good care of him, lest he gets beaten to death. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. Actually, without the monthly vote, I'm quite miserable. 7017K. Chapter 2398. The Middle World. When Yi Xian and the others arrived at the Middle World was already on standby. The city gates were closed tightly, and the entire city was unusually quiet. Moreover, countless formidable auras were concealed within the city. At the city gates, emissary Zhang gazed vigilantly at the nearby city, and he spoke in a low voice, young master, something isn't right. Yi Xian smiled, what's wrong? Emissary Zhang glanced at the surroundings and said, they want to kill you, young master. When he spoke up to this point, his gaze instantly turned icy cold. How audacious of them. He hadn't expected that they would actually dare to act against Yi Xian. This wasn't just insubordination, it was blatant rebellion. Have they gone mad? They actually dare to act against the young master. Qing Qiu, who stood by Yi Xian's side, glanced at the city with a calm expression, and no one knew what he was thinking. On the other hand, the expressions of Lan Qing and the others had become solemn. Obviously, the middle world was going to fight. Of course, they were shocked because the middle world obviously wanted to kill Yi Xian as well. All of them glanced at each other and were extremely shocked. Has the middle world gone mad? They even dared to kill their young master. How audacious are they? Suddenly, a middle-aged man appeared on the city walls. This middle-aged man was Si Juanjia. Si Juanjia gazed at Yi Xian in the distance with a calm expression. Who are you? Who are you? Yi Xian started laughing when he heard this. Looks like all of you intend to say that I'm an imposter. Si Juanjia stared at Yi Xian with an expressionless face. Isn't that the case? As he spoke, he took 2 steps forward and looked Yi Xian in the eye as he shouted furiously, "Imposter of my Yang clan, you deserve death." As soon as he finished speaking, hundreds of terrifying auras suddenly enveloped Yi Xian. All of them were at the High God realm. How dare you? Suddenly, Emissary Zhang shouted furiously, "Have all of you eaten a bear's heart or a leopard's gall? You actually dared to kill the young master. All of you." Si Juanjia was expressionless. Kill. As soon as he finished speaking, hundreds of people suddenly shot up into the sky from the city. At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm. Boom! In an instant, a terrifying bloodline aura soared into the sky from his body. In an instant, the entire sky turned into a sea of blood. Crazed demon bloodline. When they saw the berserk demon bloodline, the expressions of the hundreds of experts instantly changed, and they all stopped. Si Juanjia's expression changed when he saw Yi Xian's mad demon bloodline. Yi Xian laughed and said, "Fake? Say that again?" Si Juanjia stared fixedly at Yi Xian with an extremely unsightly expression. Yi Xian was about to speak when Si Juanjia suddenly shouted fiercely, "Kill!" As soon as he finished speaking, dozens of death warriors from the middle world charged towards Yi Xian. Si Juanjia understood very well that he couldn't waste his breath. The more he spoke, the more hesitant the people on his side would be, and then he would attack decisively and leave no way out for them. At the instant they saw those experts from the middle world attack, the experts from the other worlds hesitated for a moment before they charged out as well. There was no way out. They could only fight. Emissary Zhang's expression changed drastically when he saw the experts from the middle world attack directly. He had never imagined that the experts from the middle world would actually dare to kill Yi Xian in broad daylight. This wasn't as simple as a rebellion. When he saw the experts from the middle world attack directly, the smile on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth gradually became ferocious. Suddenly, he vanished on the spot, and the azure profound sword was unsheathed. Bang! A wave of sword light suddenly erupted in the sky. In an instant, the head of the leading High God State expert flew into the air, and the sword continued forward and killed a few more High God State experts. Si Juanjia's expression changed drastically when he saw that Yi Xian had killed several High God State experts in an instant. You've become a High God. According to the previous information, Yi Xian was in the divine transformation realm, but now, Yi Xian had actually become a High God. The sudden turn of events caught them off guard. Si Juanjia charged out, and as soon as he arrived in front of Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. Pfft! A blood-red wave of sword light slashed down in a straight line. Si Juanjia's pupils constricted abruptly when he sensed the terrifying energy within Yi Xian's sword. At this moment, he didn't dare be careless in the slightest, and he flipped his palm before suddenly lifting it up. With this lift, countless layers of space were suddenly lifted up while strands of terrifying energy poured out and shook the myriad of worlds in the universe. Rumble. An expanse of sword light was blasted apart. Both Yi Xian and Si Juanjia were blasted back at the same time, and both of them moved over 30 kilometers back. At the same time, the formidable force that erupted from them pushed back countless experts in the surroundings. The expressions of everyone here changed drastically, and they retreated explosively. Qing Qiu gazed at the surroundings with a calm expression. A strand of sword light had silently appeared on the tip of her finger. Si Juanjia gazed at Yi Xian who stood nearby, and there was a solemn expression in his eyes. His hand had split open, and his entire palm was dyed red with blood. Yi Xian's strength had far exceeded his expectations. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly closed his eyes slowly. Si Juanjia's eyes narrowed slightly when he witnessed this scene, and then he slowly clenched his right hand that was dyed red with blood. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly attacked. Hiss! The space in front of Yi Xian suddenly split apart, and then Yi Xian appeared within the universe. After that, the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand vanished. Instant of invincibility. At the moment that Yi Xian attacked, Si Juanja's pupils constricted, and he was astounded to the extreme. The aura of death. This time, he sensed the aura of death. Si Juanja was horrified, but he didn't choose to wait for death to descend upon him. He clenched his fists tightly, roared furiously, and then smashed his fist forward. This attack caused countless strands of the energy of faith to surge out like a wave. In an instant, the entire heavens and the earth seethed with excitement. Meanwhile, four afterimages crisscrossed and slashed through Si Juanja's position. Hiss! 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 Along with the sound of four ripping resounding, countless people watched as Si Juanja's body was slashed into pieces, causing blood to spray into the surroundings. His soul was obliterated. Meanwhile, Yi Xian returned to the battlefield. He opened his palm, and the green profound sword flew back into his grasp. He withdrew a silk handkerchief and lightly wiped off the blood on the tip of the sword, and then he spoke calmly, "Is that all? Is that all?" As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, the surroundings suddenly fell deathly silent. He'd instantly annihilated Si Juanja with a single strike of his sword. Needless to say, all the experts from the medium world were completely stunned at this moment. They were clearly aware of Si Juanja's strength. He was a terrifying existence that was merely inferior to a world god from the medium world, and he was even an expert at the peak of the high godly realm. Yet at this moment, such a terrifying existence had actually been instantly annihilated by a single strike of Yi Xian's sword. All of them were utterly stunned. Yi Xian's strength was actually so terrifying. On the other hand, the experts on Yi Xian's side were suddenly filled with excitement, and their morale rose greatly. Yi Xian put the handkerchief away, and then he glanced at the experts from the medium world. Who else? Who else? All of them were speechless. Who else? Meanwhile, Emissary Zhang suddenly roared furiously, "The young master is invincible! The young master is invincible!" All of them were horrified by this roar. Qing Qiu gazed at Yi Xian, who stood not too far away from her, and then she smiled sweetly. All the experts from the medium world exchanged glances. Si Juanja's death had instantly caused them to lose their pillar of support. Should we fight or not? If we don't fight, then should we surrender? But if we fight, then Yi Xian's terrifying strength. Right at this moment, a strand of terrifying pressure suddenly swept down from the sky. Yi Xian frowned when he sensed this terrifying pressure, and then he looked up into the sky. An enormous black vortex had appeared there, and then a middle-aged man walked out slowly from within it. Lan Qing's expression instantly became solemn when he saw the middle-aged man, and then he walked over to Yi Xian's side and spoke in a low voice. "He's a universe god from the medium world." A universe god. Yi Xian gazed at the universe god with a calm expression. On the other hand, the experts from the medium world became excited. A universe god. Earlier, they'd lost their pillar of support and didn't know what to do. Now that a universe god had appeared, they had hope again. In the sky, the universe god gazed silently at Yi Xian. Numerous strands of terrifying pressure pressed down incessantly. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, and then he flicked his sleeve. A strand of sword intent shot into the sky and instantly shattered the pressure. Sword intent of the human world. In the sky, the universe god frowned slightly. He was surprised by Yi Xian's sword intent. Yi Xian looked at the universe god and smiled. "You're the universe god from the medium world." The universe god nodded. "You're impersonating." Yi Xian suddenly burst into laughter. "Why do you have to talk nonsense? Come and fight." Then, he suddenly opened his palm and the green profound sword in his hand soared into the sky and slashed at the universe god. In the sky, the universe god frowned slightly. He opened his palm and a long spear suddenly flew out from his palm. Pust. A sharp tearing sound suddenly reverberated through the entire sky. Rumble. Yi Xian's green profound sword was blocked by the long spear directly. The moment the spear and the sword came into contact, an earth-shattering power instantly swept across the entire sky. Just then, a shadow suddenly plunged down from the sky. Below, Yi Xian squinted his eyes and opened his palm. In an instant, countless sword chi suddenly flew out from his palm. Rumble. As soon as the sword chi appeared, it was instantly extinguished. At the same time, Yi Xian's whole body directly flew tens of thousands of feet away. Seeing this scene, Emissary Zhang and the others' faces darkened. Qing Qiu glanced at Yi Xian in the distance. She did not say anything, nor did she make a move. The reason why she did not make a move was very simple. She knew that Yi Xian was eager for a battle, and Yi Xian's battle could also improve himself. In the distance, after Yi Xian stopped, he looked at his chest. His clothes were all torn, but the armor was still there. Arya's armor had blocked the terrifying attack of the universe god just now. Yi Xian slightly raised the corner of his mouth. He did not expect that Arya's armor would not be outdated even at this moment. He had to admit that his father was really generous this time. In the distance, the universe god glanced at the armor on Yi Xian's body and slightly frowned. What kind of armor is this? Yi Xian glanced at the universe god. How low are you in the Yang clan? The universe god slightly frowned. What do you mean? Yi Xian said angrily, you don't even know Arya's armor. What kind of people are you? In the Yang clan, are you still at the level of a village chief? The universe god. 7017K. Chapter 2399. Kill the heart. Village chief level. The universe god's face suddenly grew grave. In actual fact, he was only a small fry in the whole Yang clan. Not to mention the whole middle world, even the Xian pavilion was just the tip of the iceberg in the Yang clan. Thinking of this, the universe god suddenly felt ashamed. He looked at Yi Xian and sneered, aren't you an illegitimate child too? Illegitimate child. Yi Xian blinked, are you sure? The universe god sneered, if you weren't an illegitimate child, would you have been left alone? From what I know, the sword master doesn't care about you much. Yi Xian was silent. He really couldn't refute this point. Seeing Yi Xian's silence, the universe god said, Yi Xian, forgive me for being blunt. An illegitimate child should have the awareness of an illegitimate child. Don't you think it's ridiculous that you, an illegitimate child, want to take over the Yang clan? Yi Xian looked at the universe god and smiled, you haven't seen my sister, right? The universe god frowned slightly. At this moment, Yi Xian said again, you definitely haven't seen her. How could an ant like you have seen my elder sister? Haha. The universe god suddenly laughed, Yi Xian, you're ridiculous. No, you're pathetic. You actually think that eldest miss has a sibling relationship with you. Do you know why we dare to target you? Yi Xian shook his head, I don't know. The universe god sneered, that's because eldest miss instructed. Eldest miss instructed. Yi Xian's expression was as calm as still water. Eldest miss instructed? Obviously, it was absolutely impossible. First, he and his sister had gone through life and death together. Their sibling relationship was very deep. Second, even if his sister had 100 guts, she wouldn't dare to kill him. After all, his father was still alive. Even he wouldn't dare to target his sister for no reason. Obviously, the universe god and the others were guessing. Just as the universe god was about to say something, Yi Xian suddenly laughed and said, cut the crap. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm and the green profound sword appeared in his hand. His aura suddenly returned to its peak. Looking at the scene, the universe god's face suddenly grew grave. I've been cheated. The reason why Yi Xian kept talking to him just now was to stall for time. Yi Xian exerted the instant of invincibility when he killed Si Juanja, and exerting the instant of invincibility consumed a lot of his energy. Hence, when facing this universe god, he needed to buy some time to recover his vitality. Universe god stared at Yi Xian. Do you think you're right? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stabbed with his sword. Chi! The space before Yi Xian suddenly split. The next moment, Yi Xian escaped from the current universe. Looking at the scene, the universe god's eyes suddenly dilated. He suddenly opened his palm and a mirror appeared in his hand. At the same time, in Central World City behind him, hundreds of thousands of light pillars suddenly soared into the sky. The next moment, the hundreds of thousands of light pillars gathered in the mirror in the universe god's hand. Rumble. Then, the mirror was as dazzling as the scorching sun. Yi Xian suddenly swung his sword. For shadows appeared around the universe god. There was a flash of ferocity in the universe god's eyes. Break. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly flipped his right hand, and the mirror in his hand suddenly erupted with a terrifying white light. In an instant, this white light actually directly drowned the 4 afterimages. Hong! A shocking explosion suddenly resounded through the heavens and the earth. Chi 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 chi. Along with the explosion, there were 4 tearing sounds. In an instant, the terrifying white light was torn into pieces. When the white light dispersed, everyone realized that the 4 residual shadows were still there. At that very moment, there were 4 intersecting sword marks on the universe god's body. The mirror in his hand had already shattered into pieces. The universe god looked at Yi Xian blankly. How is it possible? You're just a god. How could you kill me? He was an expert above high god. High god. Above high god was high god. High god meant that one had already used the power of faith to a limit. It could be said that the high god realm and high god realm were worlds apart. However, at that very moment, he was killed by Yi Xian. Previously, he had already seen Yi Xian's stroke. Hence, when Yi Xian performed the stroke, he didn't belittle it at all. Instead, he decisively took out the protection formation in the city behind him to ensure that nothing went wrong. However, he didn't expect that his all-out attack and the protection formation still couldn't block Yi Xian's stroke. From afar, Yi Xian returned to his original position. He took out a silk handkerchief and wiped the blood on the tip of the green Xian sword. Then, he looked at the universe god whose soul hadn't been completely destroyed and chuckled. That's it? Everyone, the universe god stared at Yi Xian. What kind of sword technique is that? Yi Xian shook his head and sighed. Yang clan was created by my father. You don't even know the sword technique that he created. It seems that you're not even an ant in Yang clan. The universe god roared in anger. A warrior can be killed but not humiliated. Yi Xian smiled. All right. Then, he raised his hand and swung his sword. The universe god was wiped out directly. Seeing the universe god wiped out, the experts from the middle world were dumbfounded. Even a universe god was killed in an instant? Not only the experts from the middle world, but even Emissary Zhang and the rest were dumbfounded. Especially Emissary Zhang. When he first got to know Yi Xian, he was sure that he could definitely kill Yi Xian with one slap. But now, Yi Xian could kill him in an instant. He grew so fast. Emissary Zhang seemed to have thought of something and glanced at Qing Qiu, who was quiet at the side. Seeing the siblings, Emissary Zhang couldn't help but smile bitterly. The siblings were more abnormal than the other. After seeing Yi Xian kill the universe god in an instant, the experts from the middle world were shocked. To be exact, they panicked. Yi Xian's power was so terrifying. How could they fight the battle? Surrender? Was it too late to surrender now? Everyone looked at each other. Just then, the sky in the distance suddenly split open. The next moment, a shadow walked out slowly. Everyone turned to look at the sky. When the shadow walked out, a shapeless pressure swept down. Yi Xian creased his eyebrows. Damn it. Another one? Just at this moment, the shadow gradually solidified, and at the instant it solidified, the entire world became illusory. The expressions of everyone here changed when they witnessed this scene. Yi Xian's gaze gradually became solemn as well. After it became material, everyone saw the person clearly. It was an old man who wore a luxurious robe, had long hair that hung loosely on his shoulders, and stood with his hands behind his back. Moreover, there was a small, Lord character on his left chest. An expert from the middle world exclaimed abruptly when he witnessed this scene, Lord. Lord. The expressions of the experts from the middle world instantly changed when they heard this. He's from the Xian Pavilion. What was the Xian Pavilion? It was an unreachable mountain to experts at the high god realm like them. Supposedly, the Xian Pavilion would select some top-rate experts from the various worlds to enter the Xian Pavilion every 10 years. After they entered the Xian Pavilion, they wouldn't just obtain even more cultivation resources, they would obtain even more terrifying cultivation techniques. At the same time, the Xian Pavilion managed universes like the middle world. Simply speaking, the Xian Pavilion was a circle of big shots to them. Yet at this moment, a lord had actually arrived. All the experts from the middle world hurriedly knelt down and bowed. Emissary Zhang couldn't help but speak angrily. Are all of you out of your minds? Could it be that the young master can't resist a lord? Are all of you idiots? The young master. The experts from the middle world exchanged glances when they heard this. Meanwhile, the lord suddenly gazed at Emissary Zhang. Emissary Zhang's face was expressionless as he moved closer to Qingqiu and spoke indifferently. What the fuck are you looking at? I only have eyes for the young master, understand? As soon as he finished speaking, he moved closer to Qingqiu. Qingqiu glanced at Emissary Zhang and remained silent. The lord gazed at Emissary Zhang with a calm expression. A mere lord of this world dares to act presumptuously before me? As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeve, and a strand of terrifying force swept towards Emissary Zhang. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly dashed forward and slashed down with his sword. Rumble. A ray of light tore through the sky, and the terrifying force was instantly shattered by a single strike from Yi Xian. The lord's gaze descended onto Yi Xian, and he remained silent. Yi Xian chuckled, looks like you've come to kill me as well. The lord gazed at Yi Xian, yes. He didn't conceal it at all. Yi Xian chuckled, and then he opened his palm to reveal the spatial ring his father had given him. He gazed at the lord. Do you know what this is? The lord glanced at the spatial ring in Yi Xian's hand with a calm expression. I don't recognize it. Yi Xian sighed softly, my god. Are you even considered a village in the Yang clan? Everyone else was speechless. The lord stared at Yi Xian with a rather unsightly expression on his face. Yi Xian chuckled, don't you want to kill me? Why aren't you attacking? After a moment of silence, the lord asked, do you know who wants you dead? Yi Xian furrowed his brows slightly. It can't be my father, right? The green-robed man. The lord stared intently at Yi Xian. Its eldest young mistress. Eldest young mistress. Yang Nianxue. Yi Xian fell silent. At this moment, even he was a little fearful. Holy F***ck, is this big sister for real? But on second thought, it wasn't very likely. His big sister had been very good to him, and in order to save him, she had given him countless treasures to use, and she had even risked her life to save him. With this thought in mind, Yi Xian looked at the lord. With your level, can you come into contact with my big sister? Hearing this, the lord's expression froze. Seeing the lord's expression, Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. He thought for a while and then said seriously, Geezer, I'm serious. I'm begging you. I'm begging you. Could you please do some research before you do anything? Investigate first. Saying this, he took a deep breath, then said seriously, I can tell you honestly, my big sister and I have a very good relationship. Really good, we have gone through life and death together. I am not an illegitimate child, I am my father's only son, The Lord suddenly said, if you are not an illegitimate child, then why is your surname Yi and not Yang? Can you explain? Yi Xian fell silent. 7017K. Now that Yi Xian was clearly the son of the sword master, and his strength was so terrifying, who would dare to go against him? Most importantly, Yi Xian was willing to give them another chance. Following the High Lord was a form of rebellion, but following the young master was a form of loyalty. More and more people knelt before Yi Xian. It didn't take long for all the others besides the group that the High Lord had brought with him to kneel before Yi Xian. The High Lord glanced coldly at Yi Xian, and then his figure gradually became ethereal. He didn't choose to attack. At this moment, he couldn't do anything to Yi Xian if he chose to attack now. The High Lord stared at Yi Xian, you'll definitely die. As soon as he finished speaking, he and the others vanished on the spot. Yi Xian frowned slightly. If the High Lord didn't attack him, then he wouldn't be able to do anything to him. Meanwhile, Qing Qiu suddenly said, Big brother, I'll go get busy. You deal with them. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, all right. Qing Qiu smiled sweetly, and then she turned around and left. Emissary Zhang glanced at Qing Qiu, and his eyelids twitched while he broke out in cold sweat. She's gone. She's gone. He knew that the High Lord was gone. The High Lord and the others were traveling madly through space somewhere within a spatial passageway. He had to hurry back to the Xian pavilion and let them decide. Otherwise, Yi Xian's forces would only grow stronger and stronger. Suddenly, a ray of light appeared not too far away from them. The High Lord and the others immediately stopped. A little girl was standing not too far away. It was Qing Qiu. The High Lord frowned slightly when he saw Qing Qiu. It's you. He'd seen Qing Qiu just now and sensed that Qing Qiu wasn't simple, but he didn't think too much about it. Qing Qiu gazed at the High Lord. No one can survive after threatening my brother. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly disappeared. The High Lord's pupils shrank. The next moment, he was about to make a move, but Qing Qiu had already appeared not too far away from them. Qing Qiu was expressionless. Those who hurt my brother, no matter how far away you are, will be killed. After that, she disappeared into the distance. Behind them, the heads of the High Lord and the others suddenly fell to the ground, blood spurting out like a fountain, killed with one slash. In the Great World. At the city gate, Yi Xian looked at the experts from the middle world kneeling in front of him, his expression calm. Get up. Hearing this, everyone hurriedly got up, but cautiously. Yi Xian smiled, don't be nervous, I won't settle accounts with you after the fall. Hearing this, everyone's expression instantly relaxed. Just then, Yi Xian looked at Emissary Zhang beside him. From now on, you're a universe god from the middle world. Emissary Zhang was stunned, and the next moment, he hurriedly said, Young lord, I'm not strong enough. Yi Xian smiled, it doesn't matter if you're not strong enough. Once you become a universe god from the middle world, a portion of the resources will be given to you first. Emissary Zhang was overjoyed, and he hurriedly knelt on one knee. Thank you, young lord. Everyone present also cast envious gazes at Envoy Zhang. He'd become a lord of a middle world in an instant. As a lord of a middle world, the resources he enjoyed were simply unimaginable. Even though Emissary Zhang was only at the second level of the high godly realm, his future was limitless with these resources. Most of the time, it was better to ride on someone powerful than to work hard. Meanwhile, Yi Xian glanced at the experts from the middle world. From now on, all of you shall listen to Emissary Zhang's orders. All of them hurriedly bowed respectfully and said in unison, Yes, young lord. Yi Xian turned to look at the branch presidents of the Celestial Treasure Pavilion, and all of them hurriedly bowed respectfully when they saw Yi Xian look over. Yi Xian smiled, What do all of you want? He knew that these fellows didn't lack money. Of course, he didn't have money either. Lan Qing, who led the group, hesitated for a moment and said, "Young Master Yi, we don't lack money, but..." Yi Xian smiled. "Power?" Lan Qing hurriedly nodded. Yi Xian smiled. "How many universes are there under the control of the Yang clan?" Emissary Zhang replied, "A few hundred." Yi Xian nodded. "All of you can establish branches in these hundreds of universes. If there are already branches in these hundreds of universes, all of you can establish more. The Yang clan will do its best to help and cooperate with all the branches that you establish." As he spoke, he paused for a moment and continued, "What do all of you want me to say when I meet Miss Qingguan?" Lan Qing spoke with excitement. "We hope to receive a reward from the pavilion master." They knew that Yi Xian didn't have a single hair on his head. Asking for a reward from him? They should thank the heavens if he didn't ask for money from them. So, they'd never thought of asking for a reward from Yi Xian because he was even poorer than them. But Qingguan was different. Yi Xian glanced at them and said, "When the time comes, I'll ask for a reward for all of you." This. As he spoke, he blinked. "Do all of you understand?" Lan Qing was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, "Yes. Yes. When the time comes, we naturally won't forget young Master Yi." Yi Xian nodded. "We're all on the same side. You're treating me like an outsider. Don't treat me like an outsider." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Next to Lan Qing, a president hesitated and said, "When the time comes, does he want it or not?" Lan Qing's face was expressionless. "Don't ask such questions. Okay?" As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Everyone. After Yi Xian entered the city, he went directly to the city lord's mansion, found a room, and sat down cross-legged. At this time, Dedeabi suddenly said, "Your power of faith." Yi Xian frowned slightly. He opened his palm, and the human world sword intent gushed out from his palm. He found that his human world sword intent had become stronger. Dedeabi said in a deep voice, "Your power of faith is getting stronger and stronger." Yi Xian said, "Is it a good thing?" After a moment of silence, Dedeabi said, "Not exactly." Yi Xian was a little surprised. "What do you mean?" Dedeabi said in a deep voice, "Your power of faith came too fast, and it didn't settle down. I think you need to settle down now." Yi Xian was silent. Dedeabi said again, "Also, you should study the word human in the 6-syllable Sanskrit. This word contains the human Tao, and it's mysterious. If you really understand it, coupled with your human world sword intent, you will become very terrifying." Yi Xian opened his palm, and the Qingxian sword appeared in his hand. He looked at the word, and after a moment of silence, he said, "Little Bai, I heard you say that this word was left behind by some sages of the human race. This human race, where is he from? How strong are those sages?" After a moment of silence, Dedeabi said, "I can't tell you." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Why?" Dedeabi smiled bitterly. "This involves some things about my master." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Then can you tell me how strong your master is?" After a moment of silence, Dedeabi said, "Anyway, whether it is the current universe or the boundless universe, no one dares to kill him." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "Even Qing doesn't dare?" Dedeabi said, "She dares, but if my master is not here, everything will be over." Yi Xian was silent. Dedeabi said again, "My master is in a very special world, only the people of that world can truly threaten him." Yi Xian was a little curious. "The Milky Way?" Dedeabi said, "Yes and no." Yi Xian's expression froze. Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Stupid Bai, can you not keep me in suspense?" Dedeabi sighed in a low voice, "Stupid Ta, I beg you to read more books. To communicate with an uncultured Ta like you, I have become a troll. Really, as long as you speak, I want to spit at you. You are really poisonous." Yi Xian, Xiao Ta. 7017K. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.